Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your prompt entrance into the main hall, and welcome to the second one-team conference for Hdft. So we did run this conference in October last year with a focus around fundamentals of care. And for this year, our focus is on leadership. So it's really exciting to have everybody in the room. I've got a couple of just housekeeping issues that we just need to cover off so that we are not expecting a fire alarm today. If there is a fire alarm, we just need to make our way back out of the entrance that everybody came into, or out of this door here and round the outside and into the main car park area. We have got toilets just outside the room here on the left-hand side, and there's also toilets in the main entrance when you came in. We have got coffee and lunch is to be served in the entrance area where all of the stands are, and many thanks to our colleagues who are manning those stands all day, so please take the time over the break and the lunchtime to make sure that you have a good look around the fab work that the colleagues are presenting. I just want to say a huge thank you to start with, and for those of you who have booked onto this conference and been liaising with the team, just a huge thanks to Jez Horsell, who's gone above and beyond in terms of getting us all here today. Sadly, she can't be with us, but I didn't want to let the day go by without thanking her for her personal efforts to make sure that we got this day where it is, and many thanks to the team as well that have worked with her to make sure that we're able to pull it off. So as I've mentioned, huge agenda today, packed. We asked for feedback last year, and we got a lot of learning from people about how they found the conference. We had quite a few national speakers last year, which was great. Everybody enjoyed that. But there wasn't much about Hdft and what we're doing at Harrogate. So we've flipped that slightly for this year. We've got more of a focus around what we're doing across Hdft, but also scattered through that is a couple of keynote speakers, which I know people will really enjoy because they told me that they loved having Steve here last year, so we've got him back again for this year. So we've got, as I mentioned, we've got Steve as a keynote speaker. We've also got Monique this afternoon, who again has come highly recommended, so we're really looking forward to hearing from both of them. But also the fantastic teams that we've got talking about their experiences, what they've been doing at Hdft, and how that's impacted across our workforce and also for the patients and populations that we serve. So that's really what today's about. It's a celebration of what we are doing across the organisation, but also a bit of a focus around that leadership and how we support others. One of the things I did want to mention, Jackie Andrews, our medical director, is in the audience, so she wouldn't let me get a slide deck across without referring to our clinical services strategy. So colleagues will be aware that we are developing a clinical services, or we have developed a clinical services strategy, and there's further work to do on this. And I think one of the key elements that's coming out of our clinical services strategy is the importance of nursing, midwifery and allied health professional leadership throughout our changes that we need to make to ensure that our patients are cared for in the right place, that they have the right staff with the right skills and at the right time. And that is very much around how we change how we work to enable patients to have the safest care possible, but in the place that is best for them to be. So there's a huge focus on that, and we want everybody really to be involved in shaping what our clinical services strategy looks like. And that's partly why we've had the focus around leadership for this conference today, because we do want everybody to take that leadership role in developing and shaping our clinical services strategy work. As part of that, and what I do want to mention is we have got Saj joining us today from Airedale, who has led a piece of work across West Yorkshire, chief nurses, on the advanced practice framework, which is a new framework that has now been launched through West Yorkshire, and early next year we'll be launching it for Hdft. So we will be putting out a post that is to lead this piece of work around advanced practice. But this will be about how do we ensure that opportunities are available to all our nurses, midwives and allied health professionals to ensure that they can develop their career and move into advanced practice, but also support the clinical services that we're trying to deliver in a different way. And we recognise workforces, it's precious, but it's also very tight in terms of nationally recruitment and retention. We know over the years has been challenging. We are doing well in that space at Hdft now, but we now need to make sure that we're able to provide those opportunities for the staff that we've got to develop their skills and expertise further. So it'd be really great to hear from Saj on that. I do want to just, I am part of an inclusivity programme at the moment, and I heard a quote a couple of days ago that I just wanted you all to think about as part of this conference today and to take away with you. So the quote's by Dr. Jennifer De Veers, and she talks about careers do not take place in isolation. They require webs of enabling relationships. Your career success is not just a function of your talent and hard work. It also depends on the culture of your organisation, your leaders and your peers. So I just want to ask a question to you all in the audience. I'm not expecting answers, by the way. But what webs and cultures are you creating for yourself, but also for your peers around you to support leadership development and advancement in what we do in practice from a clinical perspective? So that was the main thing I was going to mention for my intro. I have got just somebody who wanted to say hi and wanted to be here today, but very sadly can't be, so we roped him into sending us a bit of a message instead.
Hello, my name is Duncan Burton, Chief Nursing Officer for England, and I'm sorry I can't be with you today. However, I wanted to take the opportunity to send you a personal message as you get together for your One Team Leadership Conference. Last year, I had the pleasure of joining you in person for your first ever One Team Conference, and it is fantastic to see our key professions of nursing, midwifery and allied health professionals together again for this year's event. I want to begin by saying a huge thank you. Thank you to all of you in the room today and to all of your nursing, midwifery and allied health professional colleagues across Harrogate and District NHS Foundation Trust for all you do to support patients, families, your communities and each other. I know your work makes a huge difference to people's lives every single day, and that was something I saw firsthand when I visited you last October. It's brilliant to see that this year's event is focused on leadership and collaboration, two things that are fundamental to our work. It is vital that our professions have a strong collective voice, and it's important that we value and listen to the voices of all colleagues. The diversity of our workforce is one of our biggest strengths. It's crucial that we continue to promote diverse and inclusive leadership across our professions, encouraging and supporting more colleagues to move into leadership positions. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to speak to you about the new 10-year health plan for the NHS. We need all of you to help shape it, and engagement is already underway. Our professions are uniquely placed to speak about what's working in the NHS and what isn't. Nurses and midwives make up nearly 1% of the population of England. That is a powerful voice for change, so please use it. The strength of our knowledge, expertise and voice will help shape a plan that gives society the NHS it needs. So please do get involved. Go to change.nhs.uk to share your views, experiences and importantly ideas. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your event today, and once again thank you for all that you do.
So that was Duncan Burton, who's our Chief Nursing Officer for England. And as I say, he did want to be here today, but sadly couldn't join us. I have just realised I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Emma Nunes. I'm the Executive Director of Nursing, Midwifery and Allied Health Professionals and Deputy Chief Executive for Hdft. Okay, so that is the main part of my introduction today. I do want this to be about sharing the amazing work that's going on across the organisation and for you to get out of this as much opportunity as possible. So I have the great pleasure in introducing Steve Head, who, as I mentioned, did join us last year. He is coach to the England Wheelchair Rugby League World Champions and keynote speaker and trainer. So thank you, Steve.
Very much. Thank you. I think you left your phone. You left your phone. Hang on a second. There you go. That's my timer, is it? Good morning. Morning. Oh, that was good. Don't get a reaction to that normally. So I did say to Emma, where she was saying this morning, what shall I say about you to get you on? I thought, I'll do it. Save a lot of faff, because I know me better than anyone. I've got about an hour and a half, which sounds like a long time to be listening to somebody. So I promise I'll get you doing something on the way through, all right? Because I'm just sitting for an hour and a half, it's a long time. But I'll tell you a little bit about myself and also a quick question. I always ask this when I'm invited back to an event. And I did speak to Jez about this, to be fair, so I've sort of been given a vibe. She told me what I was supposed to be doing. How many people in the room today saw me speak last year? So there's about 10, 15, maybe 12, I don't know, a few. Anyway, so the brief I got was most people want to see him, which is true, right? Which is the case. So what I've done is I've developed a session which has got some of the stuff from last year, but also a few extra little bits. So if you've seen me before, be a reminder of a few things. And for the rest of you, you haven't got a clue, so you've seen it for the first time. And then there's a few other little nuggets along the way. But by way of background, just to get you started, I thought I would do a little interactive exercise. Right? I know you like these sort of things. There's this, and there's another thing in about an hour I'm going to do with you, which you can, it's just a very simple exercise. You're going to be talking for 5 minutes. And you've already proved, because I've been through the coffee area, that you know how to talk. So that won't be a problem. You'll be fine with that. So just before we get started, this is the bit where you get to know something about the person sitting next to you, even if you think you already know them. Right? So, because when you go to these events, you tend to stand with your mates, sit with your mates, talk to your mates, and leave with your mates, right? It's a very strong likelihood you're sitting next to somebody you know, right? So, but this is where you get to know them a little bit better. It's dead simple. Just do this really quick exercise. It'll take literally 20 seconds. And all you need to do is clasp your hands together so your fingers intertwine very naturally and overlap your thumbs. Just natural. Don't give it a second thought. Just do the natural movement. Now, because you're going to find out something about the person next to you, have a look at how the person next to you's thumbs are positioned, especially if you know them, because you're going to find something out that's going to surprise you, right? If your right thumb, or if their right thumb, is directly above their left, if the right thumb's above the left, it means you're more mathematically minded, right? That's the first thing, right? Hang on, I haven't finished yet. However, yeah, exactly, yeah, you didn't know that, did you? If you go, this is true, right? So the other way, if your left thumb naturally falls above your right, it means that you are more sexually attractive. So that's the first message of the day. Can I just say, right, it's quite, hang on a minute, it's quite nice to have a stage because I can actually see you all. And I'm looking around the room and somebody going, look at me, look at me. You know when you're out there, you go, I wonder what today's all about, I wonder if it's going to be any good. It was bloody brilliant, this, I'm loving this. Right? By the way, I made that up. I've been married to my wife, Abby, for 31 years. I know that's not true. Right? So to get you started, so I'm from Gateshead, which is not that far away from here, but unfortunately I don't live there anymore. I live in Newbury in Berkshire, which is 4 hours away, I found out this morning. Right? So I did choose to drive up. It's my choice, get in the car at past 3 and drive up to come and see you. So I've been married to my wife, I'll be 31 years, just 31 years this year. She's a Zumba instructor. I know. So she's fit. So I'm just having a moment to myself. So she teaches Zumba and does loads of other creative stuff. I've got 2 children who are adults. Now I've got a 24-year-old daughter called Anna and a 27-year-old son called Christopher. So I'm a parent. We're parents to adults. My son is a close-up professional magician. I know. I love that, getting a little woo. I'll tell him he said that. And so when he was 17, by the way, has anybody got kids in here? Any kids, right? Right, just if you haven't, it doesn't matter, it's still relevant. You know what a kid is, don't you? You've met one. Right, so my son was 17, and I was a governor at the secondary school, so my job was to be, as a governor, you've got responsibility to develop performance for the kids, safeguard the kids, all the stuff, a bit like CQC, Ofsted, same sort of thing. They're trying to get the performance of the schools up and, whatever. So my job is to encourage the kids to go all the way. My son was 17, done his A-levels, year 1, like year 12 as they call it, lower 6th in my day. It hadn't gone well. He hadn't adjusted from GCSE. So he was in the kitchen just about to start his final year at school, and clearly wasn't remotely interested in school at this point. And some kids are like that, aren't they? Some kids they're just not ready to do it at that point. And it's fair to say you can push them. And I said to Christopher, I said, son, what's the matter? And he's normally very cheerful. I says, what's the matter? He says, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I said, if you could do anything with your life, son, what would you do? He said, I'd be a magician. And there's no words a father wants to hear more from his teenage son's mouth. I said, electrician, that's a good job. You'll do well. You'll make a load of money at that. There's people need a tradesman. He says, I said magician. I says, I know what you said. And so he's a magician. And he goes, if this was a party, and I bet there's been many parties over the years, he goes around doing, the close-up. Have you seen close-up magicians? They blow your freaking mind. They're brilliant. Unless you live with one, then they're annoying. Because when I get in, the first thing I get when I get through the door is, pick a card. I don't want to pick another card. Sick of cards, right? So, but he's also got another job. He does a full-time job. He does magic. He's a really lovely lad, 27, and he's doing all right. Done that for 10 years. My daughter is 24. She was at a place called the Hammond School in Chester for 3 years, training in dance and performing arts. So she trained in ballet and contemporary and stuff at the Hammond School in Chester. And the sad thing about her story was that she graduated after 3 years of vocational dance training, which, by the way, is bloody hard because it's like 40 hours intensive training every week, full on. She graduated in 2020. And if there's 1 year you didn't want to graduate, and I'm sure looking at some of your faces, you can relate, can't you? Not just because of the work challenges that you all had as professional healthcare providers and all the stuff that went with that, it was the fact that people's lives just ground to a halt. And suddenly Anna, when she was dancing, because Anna's 24, she was born in 2000, so her age is always the year we're in. That's how I remember it. Right? So in 2020, she was 20 years old. And she started dance school at the age of just nearly coming up to 18. And all the way through dance school, there was injuries and problems and stresses and pressures. And I used to say to Anna, when you get to 2020, you'll graduate. The Disney ships will be cruising with you on them. You'll be in a dance company. Your dreams will come true. And then she graduated on Zoom. And it was like, really. And so it was a bit of a damp squib, and it wasn't ideal. So she went through all that. And there's a few things I'll mention to do with that because there's a lot of mental health issues attached to the dance world as well. It's a very, very, in my opinion, very toxic world. And having seen what it did to her, it was quite challenging. So we've got my daughter who's a dancer, got my son who's a magician, got my wife who was a Zumba teacher, and I used to sell drugs, right? Pharmaceuticals, I should be clear. I was one of those reps. This was because I'm 61 on Saturday. I know, 61. I can't believe it myself. That means I'm 60 now, by the way. I do the maths. But I started my pharmaceutical career when I was 22. So it's like a lifetime ago when I was a rep. It's literally, I can't even remember it was real. And I used to walk into hospital. I lived in Gates to the northeast. I was doing Sunderland and Hartlepool. I didn't come down as far as this. This was like the south for me. This is like going on holiday to Harrogate, right? Was it Betty's Pie Shop or something? What it was called? Something like that. Anyway, what's it called? What's it called? Tea shop. Well, she does pies as well, probably, doesn't she? Anyway, does she just do tea? I've not been in. I just went past it. So don't get so offended. You don't own it, right? So anyway, I went in the north of England, and I'd walk into hospitals and various GP practices and try and flog me drugs. These reps that you go, "What are you doing in here?" And they would want to kick me out. So you're not supposed to be in here. And then I used to sell nifedipine, which I don't know if these drugs still exist today, but it was like a heart hypertension drug. I used to sell ciprofloxacin, which was a very high-powered at the time antibiotic. But the one thing that got me in was Caniston. Oh, that was a gate. That was a door opener. That was. They'd say, "Come in. You got any samples?" And post-it notes, Caniston, post-it notes, and pens. That was the way in, as far as I was concerned. So that was my background, and that's a lifetime ago. And then I moved through my career path, moved to Newbury, and I ended up head of training and development for a really big pharmaceutical company called Bayer, the German company. And that job, as I look back, that was in the last 4 years of my career. I was head of training and development. Everybody that joined Bayer, whether they be a rep, whether they be a doctor, a scientist, came through my department. I did the induction. I introduced them to the business. In the early days, I used to train anatomy, physiology, pathology, the disease stuff, so we could train our reps. Then I did behavioral stuff and connection stuff and communication. And I had found a job that I genuinely loved. And I think it was the first job I ever fell into. I thought, I just feel so comfortable in this job, standing in front of people, usually 20, 30 people, doing training events. loved it. And I've said this to my kids, if you can find a job in your life that you love most of it most of the time, I think you've done very well, because I don't think I've ever had a job I've loved all of it. There'll always be bits, even running my own business, there's things I can't stand doing. But you just do them because you get the good bits to do. And so standing on the stage, I love, right? This is like, I love this to bits. Some people, it's their worst nightmare, but for me, I just love it. But the stuff in the office and the admin and the background stuff, I find an absolute pain. I don't know if you're the same with some things. Do I really have to do all this stuff where you really want to do something else? But if you find a bit of a job that you love, and most of it you love, you're doing well. And I found a job I loved. And I walked in the office on the 8th of August, 2001. A date I will never forget. And my training room, which was not as grand and as big as this, but it was a decent size. You could probably get 40, 50 people to train in there. There was about 150 head office staff crammed into my room for an emergency crisis meeting. And our head of business, Roger, was at the front of the room with a very sad face, and he stood there and he announced that we'd just withdrawn Lipobay, which was a statin, a cholesterol-lowering drug, on that night before. He didn't know, head of business didn't know, the directors didn't know. It was done in Germany. No one mentioned it. He found out on the internet. That's how badly communicated it was. And everybody in the room knew when that drug was withdrawn, we'd lost €1 billion of revenue globally. The company would have to restructure, and we couldn't stay. 90% of the workforce would be let go. We knew that in that moment. And I remember thinking, there was people in tears. This was 2001. There wasn't a recession. There wasn't anything. The banking crisis wasn't for another 8 years. So kind of it wasn't anything dramatic. But it was just this immense emotion of, can we pay our mortgages? There's a lot of people in their 20s and 30s with kids and families. And my kids were toddlers, and I had a big mortgage, a house that was dropping to bits, needed a lot of work. And I remember watching everybody, and they were in tears. There was an emotion in the room. But nobody knew this. At that time, I used to go home at night, chat to my wife and say, I've written some more material. I'd love to run my own training company. But the risk of walking away, giving up your benefits and your pension and your security and your salary and starting from scratch at 37 was something I just thought, is it such a big, if I don't make any money, I'm knackered. So I used to wait. And then this moment happened. People were crying when they found out this. And I was actually, this is terrible, thinking, get in. And then as soon as as soon as I left, I rang my wife and I says, I think I might get redundancy. Wait a minute. And I ran through to Roger's office, shut the door and says, are you giving redundancy packages out? And he says, do you want to leave? And I said, no, but I would if you'd let me. And within 3 months, I walked away on the 17th of December and I set my company up, Steve Head Limited. Not a lot of effort went into the name. I just set my company up and I turned out, and then 23 years later, I'm in Harrogate. Dreams really do come true. Talking to you. If you'd said to me, though, 23 years ago, where are you going to get your work from? Not a clue. It was all about word of mouth for me. I just happened to, very early on, do an event for the NHS. And I happened to see a woman. I was talking about Dame Elaine Inglesby. She was the chief nurse at Salford. She wasn't a dame at the time. I think I got her that. She became a dame, and we just got on great. And then she got me into the chief nurse conference, and then one thing led to another. And over the last 23 years, 60% of my life, I've stood in front of audiences like yours today. And if you'd said, how does this work? Not a bloody clue. You just do your job, hopefully do a good job, and sometimes get invited back, and it's amazing. And I feel it's a privilege. I never, ever don't, when I'm driving to an event, I always think, you're lucky people get to do this. How would you get to do this? And so I've spoken to organizations like Microsoft and Santander, but honestly, the best audience in the world is people like you. You've got really hard jobs a lot of the time. Sometimes it's not so tough, I guess. You have good days and bad days, but it's a tough life. You've got a lot going on. There's always pressure. The media's never kind to you. It's all that stuff going on, trying to deliver the best you can. Now, my job is to do performance coaching. When I was 18, I started coaching, which when I look back, that's 43 years. I've got my first coaching qualification at the age of 18 in sport. Since then, I've coached in sport and business. During COVID, I started doing online events, right? Because we're doing Zoom and Teams and all that. And I was doing these webinars, and we're just inviting hundreds of healthcare professionals of all ranks. And at the end of my sessions, I'd say, if anybody wants any help, just message me, and I can always do a one-to-one online with you if you fancy a bit of support, because I do a lot of professional coaching. And I thought, I'll get a handful of requests. I got the best part of 250 requests over the next 2 years, from nurses, midwives, healthcare, allied healthcare, and also doctors, consultants, you name it, asking for support, most of which was actually to do with family life and life balance and stress and pressure and all that sort of stuff. And so I ended up doing a lot of stuff. That was almost like research, because I was hearing people telling me their stories of their pressures and their stresses and their issues with their kids and their families and their worlds and their lives and all these things. And my job is to provide support and tools and techniques to help you cope with stress, right? That's what I do. I've done it all my life. I do it, and one of the things that was mentioned in the intro, which I'm very proud of, one of the things I did, I started working in 2011, coaching the England Wheelchair Rugby League squad, which there's a whole long story how I got to do that. And we lost the World Cup twice, and it was our job to try and win the World Cup in 2022. And in 2022, where's my slide? There it is. We won. We became the world champions. So that was the night before we won the World Cup. My job was to coach that team to feel like that. That's how I want you to feel like at 11 o'clock, ideally. But my job is to coach the England Wheelchair Rugby League squad and get them to perform to their best. Now, I should be very clear, I know nothing about rugby league. I am not just like I know nothing about how you do your jobs. You know, I know you do great jobs, and I know there's a very rich mix of specialities in the room, and I've probably been touched by some of those specialities, right? Not you personally, right? I've certainly been touched by a nurse before. But the point is that I don't need to know what your job is. What I do know is you're human, you deal with pressure, you deal with family, you deal with complexity, and these people are human and they've been dealing with stuff. I think I've got a really good picture. This is a picture of the actual squad, a little bit clearer. I'll give you a quick example. I get to meet these people. I present to them in a sports hall, so it's usually when they're sitting like that, looking at me. And my job is to help people like Simo here. He's now retired from playing. He's a coach now. He lost his legs in Afghanistan. So he was stood on a landmine about 15 years ago, and this rugby league probably saved him. Wheelchair rugby probably saved him. Now, when you work with a squad like this, you meet the Simos of the world. He's the character in the room that never, ever smiled. He's smiling there. He just looked at me like this. And you could see he was just me out saying, I don't know if I trust you yet. He was working on me all the way through, and I thought, if I don't win Simo, I'm never going to win the team. I have to get Simo. It took us about a year before Simo stopped me in the car park one morning at training. He says, enjoyed your last session, mate. I thought, oh, I've got the Simo. Because once you get him, the door's open. And he's a difficult character, but I understand why. He's been through a hell of a lot in his life. He got Wayne here, who got smashed up in a motorcycle accident. He's the most disabled on the squad. He's got no feeling from the chest down. And all these different characters and personalities. But the one thing that makes them common to all human beings, wheelchair or no wheelchair, is the fact that they are human, they deal with pressure, they deal with stress. And when you lose to France, which used to be the world champions, they're not anymore, because we are. But before that, you start to wonder if you're ever going to win. You just keep losing and losing and losing. It's a bit like going for a job you don't get, or taking your driving test and you don't pass it the first time. You go, well, whatever. Second time, bloody hell. Third time, am I ever going to pass? And you start to doubt yourself. So my job is to give them the mindset and the connection so that these people play together. And ultimately, that worked. I won't bore you with any more rugby league stories, but the point about mentioning it is my job is to help people like that perform to their best. And the other reason I mention it is this. In 2018-19, Martin Coyd, who was the general manager of the squad, who was the reason I worked with the team, he trusts me, we got on great, we're good friends. And he rings me up, and Martin says to me, would you coach the squad? Because there's no money in it, so he's not taking for granted I would give up my time for now. I says, Martin, I feel it's a privilege. Of course I'll do it for you, no problem. He says, great. He said, I just need to let you know that when you deliver sessions to the squad at the various training camps, which take place every 3 or 4 months, he said, we have adopted a strap line, which is the one at the top of the screen, which says, will it make the boat go faster? Everything we do in this squad is driven by that one sentence. He says, so when you turn up and you take 1 hour of our 5-hour training camp, the team have every right to look at you and say, is this going to make our boat go faster? Is this going to add value to our campaign to win the World Cup? Because if it doesn't, why are we giving an hour to Steve? And by the way, they'll tell you, right? These lads will tell you, right? They're mostly from Yorkshire. They'll tell you, right? Honestly, they do. They'll come and, Steve, why are you taking an hour? And I think that's a responsibility right there. And I think even though you don't have the choice to say that to me, I have that responsibility to you. You've got every right to say to me, hang on a minute, I've come to a conference, I've given a day up, I could be doing something else. Is this going to make my boat go faster? And I want to tell you that by 11 o'clock, I'm going to help your boat to go faster. I'm going to give you things. And by the way, I did a conference in Aintree, and it was the 12th of May, you know when Florence Nightingale's birthday, nurse and celebration day, right? I always get booked on that day. And there were 250 people in the room, Aintree Racecourse. Finished my set, I was on in the afternoon, I finished about 4 o'clock, and everybody was leaving, and I was packing my bag, and this woman came up, this nurse, she walked to me, she says, can I have a quick word? And I says, yeah, fine, absolutely. She says, I just wanted to let you know that you haven't made my boat go faster. I was absolutely devastated. I thought, not least you wait until the end to tell me so I could think about that all the way home from Liverpool. I said to her, I'm sorry. She says, oh, no, don't get me wrong. It's been the best leadership day I've ever experienced in 30 years of nursing. And I says, well, I'm confused. because one thing doesn't compare. You know, she says, oh, no, you've not made my boat go faster, but you've definitely stopped it from sinking. And I remember, Nancy, when she told that story, I thought, that's a bloody good point, actually, because that could infer, I think you should be doing more, quicker. That's not the point of that sentence. The point of that sentence is to say, no, do what helps you get the best out of every day. Ask those questions. Challenge what's around you. If somebody asks you to go to a meeting, and I know sometimes you don't have the power to say no, right? I get that. You go, I've just got to bloody go. But have you ever been in a meeting? I just thought I'd check, right? Have you ever been in a meeting, but here's the question, and thought, why am I here? Is this really, now the question you'll be asking is, I guarantee you'll do this, tomorrow, so this is going to happen to you, you're going to go, is this making my boat go faster? In fact, you'll be able to look at your phones tonight at like lunchtime and go, I'm just going to check my meetings coming up next week. And you go, that doesn't make my boat go faster, delete. That doesn't make my boat, delete. You're going to have nothing to do next week, right? But on a serious note, I think that's a really empowering statement. And ever since I came across that, it's changed my world, because I start looking at my diary and thinking, why is that in? Why am I going there? What's the point of that? Is that really worth it? Should I be doing that? And I'm not saying I can always not do it, because sometimes I haven't got a lot of choice, but I still think it's good to at least ask the question. And when I come across something that, does that make sense? If you learn nothing else from today and just took that one thing and let that drive your decisions, where you are empowered enough to make those changes, you will find a half an hour in your diary you didn't think you had. I promise you will. You'll go, do you know what? I'm really pleased to ask that question. I was working with a director, just by the way, how weird this is, and well, I still do. I coach a director. I won't tell you where, in which trust, because it's very confidential. But when he joined this trust as director of finance, he sent me a photo shot of his diary, right, to show how stressed he was. His diary was filled from sort of 8:30 in the morning till 6 at night. Then I know he was doing emails after he put the kids to bed till midnight, getting up in the morning at 6, and had more emails even though he went to bed at freaking midnight, right? And he showed me his calendar. He showed his CFO's calendar, and they were both ridiculously, impossibly busy, right? I thought there's no way a human being can operate effectively with that many hours and that many meetings, that many commitments. And I said to this incredibly bright, intelligent, lovely guy who I've got to become very good friends with, and I said, would you do a little favor, go through the diary, go through the meetings, and ask yourself, does it make the boat go faster? And put a little question mark, and then go to the people driving those meetings and say, do I really need to be there? Right? He's the director of finance. And he came back about a month later for a one-to-one. He says, I spoke to my CFO. I identified about 9 to 10 hours, which is a lot when you've got that busy schedule, that I could free up and do something much more productive. And my CFO turned around and he said, it would look really bad if you didn't turn up. I said, well, that's not a time management issue. That's a cultural issue. Because that's not a good reason to get a director of finance in a room because it would look bad because you didn't turn up. That's not good. That's not adding value. That's not, if anything, that's making your boat bloody sink. Right? And I taught this to my daughter, Anna. So during COVID, when she was at home feeling very low, understandably, I was in the house and I said, Anna, we're doing this thing with the rugby league lads, boat go faster, blah, 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 and I told her about it. A few weeks later, she comes down to the kitchen, because obviously we're over each other's, we're all over each other, we've been in the house for 24 hours a day. And I said to her, she came out, she says, Daddy, I've made a decision to come off social media for 3 months, she said. Right? She's 20 years old. I said, oh, good luck with that. Anyway, every time I saw her, which was most days, we'd catch up and I'd say, you still doing it? Yeah, still doing it. Weeks went by, months went by, a couple of months. I says, you still off social media? She said, yeah, I'm still off social media. I says, that's right. I'm very impressed that you've managed to resist, because especially when there's nothing going on and you're a bit trapped in your room and stuff, this is very impressive. And then she sort of walked in the kitchen one day, and she's very articulate, Anna. She says, Daddy, do you know what? Since I've come off social media, she says, I've been going for walks in the morning, long walks. She says, I'm watching the sunrise. I've got no earphones in me. In my head, so I'm listening to stuff and I'm watching around. I'm sleeping much, much better. I feel better about myself than I have probably for 3 years since I started dance school. More confident. I feel more clear in mind. I just feel generally more well, right? And she described it much better than I'm doing with you. And I says, that's amazing, Anna. That's fantastic, excellent. She says, do you know what coming off social media has done, Daddy? I says, what's it done to me, Dad? She says, it's made my boat go faster. And I thought, at last, she's listened to something I've said. And I think that's a really good example, because that's a great example of doing less and yet somehow being stronger for it. I think that's a powerful position. So, and Anna lives by that now. We still share messages on that same concept. So that's my first little tool, little tip. The next one is a slide. I'm going to show you a visual. If you've seen me before, so you'll have seen it because I show this everywhere I go. What I'd like you to do is to shout out some feedback on the slide, right? But if you've seen me, you can't join in. You've just got to sit quiet for a minute. So remind me who's never seen me before? Where are you? It's most of you. Less than before. Oh, you've forgotten what you did. Right. So can you, when I show the slide, would you give me some feedback? 7 of you. Have you heard yourselves? There's 150 people in this room. I said, will you give me, I'm trying to make this sound more exciting than it needs to be. I'm trying to build it up. And I get, yeah. In fact, what I saw was a load of faces looking at me going, I don't think so, Steve. This sounds like hard work. I'm not here to work. I'm here to rest. I've got a question. This will warm you up before I show you the slide. This will get you going, right? You don't have to speak for this. You just have to raise your hand if the answer is yes. So by a show of hands, how many people in this room talk to themselves? Brilliant. And by the way, there's a few of you haven't even put your hands up. You're sitting there looking at me going, do I talk to myself? And you do. You know you do. You're doing it now. Do you think your self-talk affects how you feel? Right, that's not even a question. I've got this picture up, I didn't mean to leave it there this long, but when I was taught, the first thing I do, we're just about to start a new campaign in the beginning of next year for the next World Cup. 80% of these players will be the same, there'll be 20% new players. But the very first question I always ask them is, do you talk to yourself? And they always have it, and I say, do I talk to myself? And then I say to them, does your self-talk affect how you feel? And the answer is, it does. If your self-talk is critical, if it's nagging you, if it's bringing you down, you know the time you have in the car on the way to work or the car on the way home, right? The time on your own, you're never on your own, are you? And if you've just left an unfinished piece of business, what keeps you awake at 2 o'clock in the morning? Have you ever woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning? You don't want to be awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, but you wake up. And you know the best thing you can do is practice a little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of box breathing, right? But you don't, do you? You go, oh, that I didn't solve. Oh, that bloody hell, that's annoyed me that today. I don't believe they said that to me. I can't believe I'm going to have to sort that one out. See, what I'm going to do for the next 3 hours, I'm going to work that problem through until about 5 o'clock, till I'm absolutely shattered. I'm going to wind myself up into knots in bed. I'm going to hate everybody for the next 3 hours. And you do it. Then you fall asleep at about 5:30, wake up at 6:30 when you were supposed to wake up, and you're absolutely shattered, right? That's self-talk. Nothing's happened. You're just talking it through. I'm going to show you the antidote to negative self-talk. Honestly, this is amazing. You're welcome, by the way. You're welcome. So this question, this is really based on the same principle, but this is where you don't use your self-talk to communicate. You simply shout something out. So when I show you the slide, what I'd like you to do, again, if you've seen me before, keep quiet for this one, and the rest of you just shout out some feedback on the slide. Are you ready? Very good. Right, so I love that somebody just, wasn't looking, just I heard the word sums. And I thought, that's good, that's good. You knew it was sums. I showed this at an NHS finance conference. And they loved it, obviously. And it was in London to about 150 NHS finance professionals from Healthcare Finance Management Association. And there was finance directors, deputy directors, and I clicked my little button, and I said, give me some feedback. And before I had a chance to even look up, somebody shouted out, good enough! That's NHS finance for you, right? Right? So an accountant with a sense of humour, I enjoyed that. The point about this slide is whenever you show it, you'll have heard a couple of people in the room, and thank you for shouting out. The last one's wrong. You just hear wrong. You hear that a lot, right? And I've never ever asked an audience ever to say, tell me what's wrong with it. I've always said, can you give me some feedback on it? What you could have done, what I'd love you to do, is go, 3 are right, you're a genius. I love your shirt, you're a handsome man too. Nice one, Steve. But you don't. You go, last one's wrong, you thick Geordie, right? Though you didn't say it like that, but you see where I'm going with this. The tendency in life is to always go for the 15, the bit that doesn't seem right. And I've got no issue with understanding where I've got flaws or faults or where there's risk or where something should be fixed. I absolutely 100% believe in that as a healthy strategy. But I also think you've got an opportunity, more than you realize sometimes, to focus on what I call the 149. I call this the 149 effect. The 149 is all the stuff that's working, that's right, that's correct, that requires a bit of encouragement and praise, because when you're getting it right, we need to know where we get it right. Whereas it's very easy to get it wrong. And the media, don't get me started on them, where do you think their focus is most of the time? 15 or 149? 15 all day, isn't it? Right? Have you ever had, serious question now, just before I go further with this. So this slide is really about two things, right? It's about your environment. You can have a 149 culture. You were talking about that in your intro, am I right? A 149 culture where people feel encouraged, supported, safe, can speak up, all that sort of stuff. You know, I was at the Royal College of Nursing the other day talking to student nurse ambassadors. And they had a session before me, a big workshop for about an hour and a half on a new department within the RCN, which is all about activism, which is quite a strong word, I think. But when I watched the workshop, what it's really about is about giving people the courage and the strength to say, you have a voice, no matter what rank you are, it's okay to say, I'm not happy. You know what, it's that stuff. I completely understand that. When you're in a 149 culture, people speak up. When you're in a 149 culture, people feel safe. When you're in a 149 culture, it feels great. When at 15, it feels like I'm oppressed, nobody listens to me, I'm not valued. And one girl the other day, one woman the other day, she was a student nurse, as I said, I don't know how old she was, she just turned around and says, in a little workshop, she says, some of the senior people, the people that she looks as senior, who are qualified nurses or whatever, often they'll call her baby face because she looks very, 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 very young. And she says, and I get that I look young, but she says it instantly makes me feel, well, I'm not qualified to say anything to these people in this room. Now, I don't think the person saying it maybe is to be malicious, but it's that kind of thing. So 149 is positive, 15 is critical. And so if you think back, let's take it out of nursing and take it out of healthcare and take it out of all that stuff for a sec. Has anybody here ever been to school? Right? Some of you a long time ago, some less so. Now, think back to school, right? Just think about this for a sec. We've got a couple of words that you can have a bit of a shout out. Did you ever have a teacher that you would have described, using my little metaphor, as a 15 teacher? Now, 15 teachers, let me be clear, are the ones that probably shut you down, you know, don't let you speak, they're very hierarchical and say, don't you answer me back, those kind of ones that sort of even scared you a little bit. How did a 15 teacher make you feel? Think back to one, you can probably even picture them, you probably remember their name, right? How did they make you feel? Shout a word or two out. Useless and, what was it? Small. Let's just keep those two words, useless and small. Hold on to that. Did you have a 149 teacher? I can think of several. Mr. Hepworth, Mr. Jefferson. I was in school 50 years ago. I can picture them. I know what they taught me. I know what they made me feel like. How do you think a 149 teacher makes you feel? What's that? What? You learn better. Fabulous. Right? So you've got, you learn better, you're encouraged, you feel fabulous. And what was the two words, little and small? Was it small and useless? Small and useless, right? What's the environment that gets the best productivity? When I was a governor of a secondary school, why was I asked to be a governor? I'll tell you why, because I used to speak to all the year 11s every year, and the head said to me, you should be a governor. And I thought, all right then. He says, I want 149 in the classroom, Steve. I want every teacher to bring 149 to the classroom, because if a teacher brings 149 to the classroom, kids will put their hands up with gay abandon because they don't care if they're right or wrong, because there's no reason to be scared to say, I've messed it up. Well done for having a crack though, son, right? You make them feel good, don't you? It's amazing. 149 leadership, 149 teachers, 149 everything. Just gets the best out of people. And by the way, I'm not even a positive person. People have said, this annoys me, don't even try this with me, right? I've had people come to me over the years, 23 years I've been doing this job, 23 years. And the number of times people used to come into breaks or whatever and they'd say, Steve, I get your point. I'm listening. I get what you're saying. Common sense stuff. But you clearly have got the positive gene. I think, what? I was born up in Gateshead. Do you know how many hours of sunlight you get in Gateshead every year? You know the summer of 76? Who was around summer of 76? You know the hot, hot, hot summer? I had a cagoule on. It was cold where I was. Gateshead doesn't get a lot of sun, right? My family life, I'll give you a peppered history, right? I've told you about my adult life. I was up in a family in Gate. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. I was born in 1963. My brother Eric was born in 1962, 18 months before me. He became an accountant, and he's still around, doing very well. My brother John was born in 54. And within a few years of him being born, my dad would tell the story, we could see something wasn't right. My brother, when I knew him, because he was 9 years older than me, had a severe degenerative form of cerebral palsy. It wasn't even really understood. It was 3 conditions in one. It was cerebral palsy, ataxia nervosa, and athetosis. These conditions affect your neural system, make you spasm, you can't control your saliva, you can't control your mouth, you can't control speech, you can't control movement, you can't wash yourself, dress yourself, but it happens insidiously over time. So relatives would come every Christmas and say, John could feed himself last year, but he can't this year. We would just see him every day. So my job as a kid was to get out of bed and dress my brother, wash my brother, take him to the toilet, sort him out. Right? Come in from school and cheer him up because he was depressed. And my mother had clinical depression for 50 years. I had a depressed mother, a very severely disabled brother, and my dad was a civil servant and was a very normal, straight bloke. right? And so I wasn't brought up in a 149 family. I was brought up in a family, right? Now, don't get me wrong, we laughed a lot at each other, right? My brother John, I used to have to take him out and keep him, remember say, get John out from under me feet, she'd say, right? I need to do some stuff. So I'd put John's coat on, I'd bump him down the stairs in his wheelchair, and I'd put him in the driveway, which was on a slope, right? And I'd put the brakes on. You know how wheelchairs work. I'd lift the footrests out the way, and I'd say to John, right, you're the goalkeeper, and I'm Malcolm MacDonald, who was a good footballer in those days, right? I was a striker. And I would kick balls at the garage doors, and if it hit the door, goal to me. And if he saved it, great. Now, John didn't have any coordination, but he could flail his arms around pretty quick, right? I used to kick balls. I made it fairly close to give him a chance. I'm not cruel. I used to hit balls, kick balls at my brother. And he'd flick his legs, and he'd spasm and flick, right? And if you flick your legs on a wheelchair, what happens is the wheelchair will go over backwards, right? So he would go like, he was like a dying insect. And then I'd dribble around him and score. Brilliant for my self-esteem, by the way. And then John, people think this is cruel. You see, this is the 1970s. This is how you treated people like my brother. This was a brother playing football with his brother. When I think back, I think the things we did, I used to take him, he used to love going to the cemetery. And I'd push him around, my mum would say, just daft little things, go for long walks. Boring for, by the way, a 9 or 10-year-old or 12-year-old. Boring as hell. But you knew you were doing the right thing, help my mother out. I'd be pushing my brother, trying to make it a bit lively, reading gravestones. I don't know why. It sounds pessimistic, but it's actually quite therapeutic, right? And then the cemetery's on a hill, and I would just let go of him in his wheelchair. It was such fun. And then I'd just start walking beside him, and he's going, oh, like this. It was brilliant. The things we did. But the point was, I was with him. And people, it wasn't cruel, honestly. It's a brother with a brother. It's taking the mickey out of each other. It's having a laugh. It's having a game of football. And instead of that, he'd have been sitting in the house, bored off his head. But he was outside, going down a slope at 20 miles an hour, facing basically serious injury. But, I stopped him before the end. I grabbed it, you know what I mean? I'm not bad. But the point about it was, I wasn't brought up in a happy, joyful, positive, bubbly house. It is a choice to be 149. Does that make sense? When I woke up this morning at 3 o'clock to get showered to come and see you, I don't even know you, right? And I got in the car, 20 past 3. I said to myself this morning, I got in the car and I thought, you must be mad. And then, because I couldn't come up last night, to be fair. And I drove up this morning, and the motorways were brilliant, the journey was excellent, there was nothing on the road, it was fantastic. But I thought to myself, you know what? I'm a lucky bloke to get out of bed on my own, really. I do think that sometimes, because my brother couldn't have. And I used to think, God, maybe having John in my life is the reason I'm like, yeah, maybe that's what's triggered it. But I think 149 takes a bit of effort. It's just a bit of it's a journey. It's like, get up. Do I want to be the 15 in the room of the 149? And also, the great thing about 149 is, it gets you into a good state. It makes you maybe a bit more encouraging, supportive, positive, look for the good where other people aren't. And when you have your bad days, which I do have, when I'm not feeling happy and I'm not feeling joyful and I'm not feeling energized and I'm not bubbly version of myself, then you've got enough relationships and enough connection. Like with Abby, she'll pick me up. She'll go, you're not feeling it today. I go, I'm not, Ab. And she'll go, well, take it easy. You can't be everything to everybody every day. And you need that, don't you? I need somebody to go to when I'm feeling shocking. Because I'm not always chirpy. I am for you now, but I can be miserable from 11 o'clock on my way home. But I think overall, and I'm going to show you a little methodology in a minute, which you'll really like, is all about trying to find the 149. Now, one final little point on this. The Wheelchair Rugby League squad, when they got to the World Cup year 22, beginning of the year, I got a phone call saying, will you help the squad develop some values? Now, your trust will have a set of values. Values, in my opinion, are simply a set of standards that direct your behavior. So if you've got a value of kindness or support or encouragement or collaboration or communication, these are the things that drive behavior. The Rugby League wheelchair team didn't have their own values. Rugby League did, but Rugby League wheelchair didn't. They said, would you help us get some values? And I said, yes. So I ran some workshops on Zoom because it was the most efficient way to do it. And at the end of the first hour of the first workshop, the team had agreed their first value. I won't bore you with the rest of them because they're not yours. I just thought I'd tell you this one because I think it's generically brilliant. And the first value they agreed, very much based upon this principle, is celebrate all the wins on and off the pitch. Never let a success go by without talking about it. If ever there was a value, or at least a strategy, to apply in the NHS, that is a cracking one for the NHS. Right? Celebrate all the wins on and off the pitch, because it's so easy to forget how much progress you're making. Now, I'll give you, from a mental health perspective, let me just share something with you, right? So, Anna, when COVID finished, so she decided she couldn't be at home. She'd been at dance school for 3 years, so she felt trapped. COVID, even more than you would have done, because you'd already left home, really. So I understood perfectly. Daddy, stood me up. I need to get away. So she went to Chorley Wood to seek her fortune, right? And she was in and out of London and pursuing acting classes and more dancing, and she was free and she was going for jobs. She got a job at Harry Potter Studios, helping people catch the snitch. She got a job at Stranger Things Immersive Experience, which was through Netflix, which is a good brand to be attached to, doing 5 acting jobs. And she got a role in Doctor Who, a casted role in Doctor Who as a dancer. And she did all these amazing things in this year. Anyway, she came back in March 2023. Not that we didn't see her lots in the meantime. But a little meeting in Cafe Nero in Newbury, which is where we meet a lot. And there was me, Abby, and Anna, and we're chatting away. And by the way, the best thing about having adult children is you get to go on holiday without them. Right? This is a magical time. You've got young kids. Trust me, there's going to come a magical day when you'll just be able to nick off on holiday with not a soul with you, right? So me and Abby go on holiday. We're like a young couple again. And when we go on holiday without our 2 children, the one thing we talk about all of the time are the 2 freaking children, right? That's the only subject we seem to have. Oh, Anna's struggling with this. We need to sort that for Christopher. I don't think he's doing very well there. We need to sort that out for her. We need to sort this. And we're Googling stuff and fixing stuff and looking stuff up. And we're looking, the Disney cruise ships are looking for people. We're telling her about that. She wants to get her profile up to date, get some new photographs taken, get a new video on this. We'll sort that for her. So we took her to Cafe Nero, and we then presented her with several well-thought-through ideas. And she sat there, and we said, how are you doing, sweetheart? Really good. Well, you've been a year since COVID, and you've got yourself back on the road doing some stuff. I says, me and Mummy have been looking stuff up. The Disney ships are looking for people at the minute. You might want to get an application into that. There's an agent looking to represent people. You might want to follow them up. There's a new thing you can do, get a dance company to represent you so you can get around the country dancing and performing. You can do this. And we give her idea after idea after idea after idea, well thought through ideas. It took about 90 seconds to have her in tears. She was literally just filled up. You could see her eyes glaze over. And me and Abby then clicked in that split second. Here's me talking to perfect strangers, I don't know you, about the benefits of 149, be encouraging, be supportive. And here's me and Abby bombarding my daughter with all the things she needs to do to progress her career forward. And we just stopped in that split second and I said, Anna, what are we doing? I said, you've had this amazingly difficult time through COVID after the challenge of 3 years of heavy training. You've gone off on your own. You've got Netflix on your CV. You've got Warner Brothers, Harry Potter Studios. You've got bloody BBC, Doctor Who. You've got a short film you're doing. All these things. And we're talking about the to-do list. I says, you know what you should do when you do your journal? She keeps a journal at night. I says, tonight when you go to bed, you should sit down and just write down and reflect upon all these amazing achievements over the past 12 months. Because you've done a lot. She says, and she just said, I've done a lot, haven't I, Daddy? I says, you have, sweetheart. I says, and here's me and Mummy, like a couple of numpties, telling you what you've yet to do. There's always going to be a to-do list, isn't there? And in the NHS, I think that's important because whatever you do never ends. I hate to tell you, but it never ends, right? There's a waiting list, and when you've sorted that waiting list, there'll be another waiting list. Well, you know what I mean? It might not be as long, but it'll still be long. There's always going to be people wanting you, needing you, and a bit more. And I think one of the biggest benefits of going back in time is progress, not perfection. That's the line we use for these lads. We see it a lot in performance nowadays, is of course you've got more mountains to climb, but you're more encouraged to do them when you realize just how far you've come. Has anybody ever gone hiking, and you go up a little hill, and you go, oh, there's the top, and you get there and you go, shit, that's not the top. There's another top. And you get to the top of that one, you go, oh, there's another bloody top. And it keeps doing that. It's that false peak thing, isn't it? You're not there. Well, here's the thing, right? What motivates you when you're on those long hikes, if you ever do them, is to look back and go, look how far we've come. We've done all of this. I reckon I can do that a bit more now. I can keep going. It's a powerful strategy. Celebrate all the wins on and off the pitch. Progress, not perfection. Look how far you've come. It's very powerful stuff. It gets your brain in a better place. But I'll also tell you one other thing. Now, I'm going to share a little strategy with you now. I'm going to multimedia. I'm going to use my flip chart. I'm going to share a little strategy with you now. And this strategy is going to be something you can use at home tonight. When I share this with any audience, and I've shared this with thousands of people, about 50% of any group I share it with immediately say, I'm going to use that tonight, and it will transform the atmosphere in your home. It's coming your way now. It's dead simple. Doesn't cost money. Dead straightforward. you just need a little bit of understanding. So what I would say to you is a couple of things. This is all very well. It's easy to stand here and talk about all the positives and be positive and all that stuff, but that assumes that we are kind of, we can just switch it on and switch it off. When we're in emotional states, it's not that easy. And we're emotional beasts, right? We've got emotional drivers. Well, there's a great book by a guy called Steve Peters. Now, this book, some of you will have read. I'm not going to go through the book with you. I'm just going to share one little point from it. Steve Peters wrote a book called The Chimp Paradox. Has anybody read it, had it presented to them, got the gist? There's not very many, actually, but don't worry, I'm about to share. It's 40 years of psychiatry experience from Professor Steve Peters. Why is it relevant? Because Peters became famous because he coached the Team GB cyclists, and suddenly we went from good to great. Started winning loads of gold medals, somebody wouldn't know what we're doing. And one of the reasons was we got Peters in to help control the emotional part of the brain. The reason he calls it the chimp paradox is because he did some research during his lifetime comparing primate brains with human brains, hence the chimp paradox. What's the difference in function? That was all it was, right? If you want to get more analytical and more scientific about it, it's the amygdala. It's the fight or flight part of the brain. Anyway, I'm going to show you 40 years of experience in about 15 minutes and how Steve Peters' awareness, it's really not about his stuff, it's about a little technique I'm going to share that you can take home tonight, use, and we use this with the rugby league lads to help them stay calm under pressure. That's the point. When stress hits, what button do you push to stay calm when people are trying to stress you out, right? And so the way it works is this. I'm going to show you a slide as well, but just for the purpose of dynamics, I'm going to create something in front of your very eyes. And I know you're a long way at the back, but you'll be able to get the gist of this. So you've got the chimp. This is the brain. This is how Peters describes it. I'm not going to take it any different from the way he would do it. He talks about the human brain, and he talks about what he calls the autopilot. 3 functions in the brain. Clearly, the brain's more complex than this, but this is the gist. Human brain is rational. Autopilot is where you store all of your wiring, all of your experiences, everything that's made you who you are today. And chimp is the emotional part of the brain. It's the fight or flight part of the brain. It's sometimes catastrophic, sometimes irrational. And I'll give you an example. If you want to get chimps activated within the National Health Service, you just need to do one simple thing. Announce a restructure. Ideally near Christmas. And you'll see till, oh, it's happened again, they've bloody done it again. They're restructuring again, they've only just settled the first time. They've restructured, oh, this is my job up for grabs again, I can't believe I've got to apply for another bloody job, right? How many people have been in the NHS, had more than 5 changes over the years, seen 5 different transitions and changes in the years. That's about 10, 20 years, right? You've got FHSAs, and you've got PCGs, and you've got PCTs, and you've got CCGs, and you've got CSUs, and you've got, the times and all these journeys you've been on, been through them all, right? Now, if you've been through them and survived them well, your experience of change is not bad. So when somebody announces another one, you go, it'll be fine, man. It'll be fine. I've been through 7 changes. Look at me. I'm fine. Right? Don't worry about it. The young uns, they're the ones that get agitated. Oh, change. Don't you worry about change. Don't you worry about it. It'll come and it'll go. You shall be fine. Right? This is why wisdom is good, because the more experiences you've had, the more you're ready to cope with the thing, aren't you? People say about nursing and midwifery and allied healthcare and anybody in healthcare, we need to build resilience. You're very resilient, because otherwise you wouldn't be here sitting up. Aren't you? You've been through stuff. You're unbelievably, I said to my daughter, you're 24, sweetheart, you've been through some stuff most people can't even dream about. You're very resilient. You've got all these lessons learned. They're all hardwired. They're all to draw on. So the way the brain works, just so you know, the world throws stimulus at you. It could be organizational change, it could be anything. It comes in, ironically, through the most emotional part of the brain. Ideally, it should come in through your rational brain, and you'd think about it and process it, but it doesn't. It comes through the emotional brain. It's then a little message in a millisecond is sent to your autopilot, your computer, to ask, what do we think about that? And it depends on your experience as to how you react. Make sense? It's dead simple. So everything comes into your life, it gets processed through the chimp. Now, to give you another example of the irrationality of a chimp, right? I'll tell you how it works sometimes. Anybody here drive a car? Right. Some of you probably drove here today. Now, when you're driving somewhere, you get on the road and I'm going to assume for the purpose of this little anecdote that you're nice people, right? You are nice people, rational, nice people. You drive in your car on a dual carriageway and you see roadworks sign. 6 miles, you think, oh, bloody roadworks again. It's 4 miles, 2 miles, 1 mile, then it gets to 800 yards, 400 yards, 200 yards, 100 yards. and then the cones come in. But you do the right thing. You pull in the left-hand lane, and you just queue. You're just chugging along, back to back, back to back, back to back. Think, no, bloody hell, 40 minutes in a queue. I could do without this morning. But you just get on with it. Your chimp's getting a bit agitated, but you're dealing with it with a bit of Mozart. You're driving along. You get to 800 yards, 400 yards, 200 yards. Now, I'm going to assume you're a rational, nice person normally. Just as you get to 100 yards, somebody in a big, black, shiny 4x4 comes rushing past you, indicates, and tries to squeeze in. It's at this point where your chimp goes, I don't think so. I've been in this queue for 45 minutes. If you think I'm pulling over for you, you've got another thing coming in your big, black, shiny car. Who do you think you are? And you're doing this from the outside. It looks like this. You're going. And you don't even look at them, do you? You look away. You're going, I'm not even going to look at you. I'm not even going to look at you. And you pull up so close to the car in front, you couldn't get a piece of tin foil between the two of you. You're going, you're not getting in. You're not getting in. Somebody else left over. The mug's going to let you in. I'm not letting you in. And you get there, and it gets to the last few yards, and the grind to a halt, and you go, that'll teach you. Then you realise you've got your NHS badge on, you go, oh! I care, but not about you. Right? Do you see? That's your chimp. It's irrelevant. Let it go. So anyway, I'm going to share a little tip with you now. It's a very simple tip. I'm going to write it down. It doesn't really need writing down. It's called the 4-minute rule, right? And the 4-minute rule, dead simple, it means that when you go from one meeting to another, even if it's on Teams, face-to-face, one ward, one patient, one, living room, dining room, whatever, every transitional moment in your day, when you walk through the front door tonight, for example, you can't say anything negative or critical about anything to anyone for 4 minutes. That's the rule. Right, now let me explain. Right? I brought this into our marriage about 12 years ago. It saved us through COVID, this. It's genius. Right? Nothing negative or critical about anything to anyone for 4 minutes. So I need to tell you a little bit of background, how this works. So I was brought up in a family. You've heard the background of my life. I worked out as a kid how to keep the peace in my house up north as a kid. And it was simple. My mum was a working class woman, very house proud. And when she worked on Saturdays, she went to Boots the chemist to work as a dispenser. It was the only day of the week in our house where it was calm because my mum was always tense and on edge, and everybody else was on edge. It was like walking on eggshells. And so I knew when my mother came in, she liked the house to be clean. So I'd spend all day Saturday hoovering, dusting, and tidying up. Hoover, dust, and tidy up. And my mum would come in from Boots, 5:30. My dad would pick her up. She'd walk past with her white gown on, white thing on, and a blue badge. She'd put her bags in the kitchen. I'd hoovered, dusted, tidied, done the dishes, done the benches, done the sheets, ironed, put stuff away. Everything was immaculate on a Saturday at 5:30. And I'd stand there like a military exercise. She'd walk past, put her bags in the kitchen. She'd go, I was Steve, have you done this? And I'd go, oh. She'd go, this is lovely, thank you. And I thought, yes. And Saturday nights were the best nights. And I drew a very strong connection, hardwired, tidy house, happy mother, better life. Tidy, happy, better. Tidy, happy, better. Tidy, better. Tidy. Right? I love tidy. Frickin' love it. And it means something because it's hardwired. When it's tidy, the world works better. It doesn't, but that's how it feels, and it's hardwired. Tidy, happy, better. Tidy, happy, better. Right? That's me. Hoover, dust, and tidy. If I had a tattoo, it would say, Hoover, dust, and tidy up. Right? That's all it would say. Right? But here's the thing, right? I'm going to now use this red pen to illustrate. So if Peter's model is right, and this is all my neurons of all my wiring for anything I've ever done in my life, then this is my wiring for tidying up as a percentage of all my neurons, right? I'm nearly finished. Can you see that? That's me. There you go. That's my neurons. Anyway, my wife Abby and I did say this at the start, married 31 years. What I didn't tell you was we met in January 93, married in June 93. 5 months. There's only one downside, bit of advice for you, about marrying somebody after only having met them 5 months ago. The downside is you can't possibly know them. Turns out her family upbringing, although she was brought up in Newcastle, I was brought up in Gateshead, just a few miles away, was very different. Her mum and dad met in the Caribbean on the cruise ships. I'll say that again. In the 1960s, in the Caribbean, on the cruise ships. I don't know what they were on, but I think they were relaxed. Right? They're the most easygoing couple in the world. Abby's mum is 77 and her dad is 83, and they're still going strong, still graft full-time jobs and all sorts of bizarre, amazing people. The most easygoing people in the world. And Abby's the eldest of three. And I believe Abby's family motto, unofficial though it may have been, was leave it out because you might need it again. Because not once in 31 years of marriage has my wife ever uttered the sentence, that needs putting away. I'm surprised we take the Christmas tree down. She goes, we'll be using that next year, might as well leave it up. Right? Doesn't put anything away. Right? No, she's just unbelievable. I've never known anybody but to create such mess. It's just impossible, but she does it all the time. Doesn't see mess. Right? I'm going to use this pen, this blue pen, to illustrate, just by comparison, if this was Abby's brain, just for comparison reasons, how many neurons I believe are allocated to tidying up in my wife's brain. And now you're at the back going, I can't see that, Steve. Neither can I, and I'm next to the board. It's tiny. And I'm doing that, and I'm over-egging it as well. Not once in 31 years has she ever put anything away. And then in COVID, we were stuck under the same roof 24 hours a day. Right? Can you see the conflict here? Now, people have said to me many times when I've taught this, they've said, Steve, you've just spent the first half an hour talking about 149, be more positive, be more encouraging, give more praise, and you are slating your wife off, and she's not here to defend herself. Well, I'm going to say something nice about her now. She's lush. She's absolutely lush. She's the nicest person you'd ever meet. If anybody doesn't like Abby, there's something wrong with you. She's lovely in every way. She's gorgeous. She's also a good cook. Yeah, exactly. I'll come with a list. Not once in 31 years of marriage have I ever been disappointed with the end product. Her methodology, however, leaves a bit to be desired. The other day, I made a chicken sweet and sour from scratch. Chicken, ginger, garlic, chili. When I'd finished, there were 4 bowls of chicken sweet and sour on a Dettol's bench with a clean cooker and a dishwasher ready to go. She made an omelette I couldn't get in. And recently, I was working at home all day. I'd tidied the house within an inch of its life. It was like a show house. It was immaculate. Everything was polished and clean. I came in the kitchen about 7 o'clock at night, and I had a letter which needed to be mailed to Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, HMRC, in a brown envelope, and I placed it on my glistening bench. And I said to Abby, I'm up at 4 in the morning. I've got a conference in Manchester. I'm cheering teachers up against their will for 6 hours tomorrow. Can you mail that first class for me tomorrow? It's a very important letter. And she went, yeah. And you know when you think somebody hasn't really listened to you? So you go, Abby, look at me. If you don't mail that letter tomorrow, first class, I could go to prison. And she goes, ha, 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 ha. I says, well, it's exaggeration, but seriously, she says, I'll mail you a freaking letter for you. She says, I'm up in the morning, I'm doing Zumba, I'll take it to the Central Post Office, I'll even get you a receipt. Are you happy now? I says, I'm happy now. And I went to bed, and I woke up at 4 o'clock, and I drove up to Manchester, and I cheered teachers up for 6 hours. I'm halfway home, I get a phone call from my wife. She goes, how far are you away? I go, I'm about 2 hours away, but it was a tough crowd. I'm absolutely knackered. I just want to get home. She says, be delighted to know, when you come in, I've cooked a lovely meal for you. I then put the phone down in the car. Now, this is a 149. I should be grateful. But my chimp is the only thing I've got in the car. And my chimp's having a chat, and it's not helpful. Because now it's thinking, what's your kitchen going to look like when you get in on a Friday night? And my chimp is not helpful. It's going, don't go home. Stop in the Premier Inn. At least there'll be clean sheets. Don't face it. You don't want that on a Friday night. That's the last thing you want, son. You're not in the mood. You'll snap. I'm going, I've got to go home. Dude, I love the woman. She's cooked a lovely meal. You should be grateful. Anyway, I drive to my front door. And I pull up in the drive. And I promise you, by the way, I'll be doing this tonight. I practice this all the time. And I get to the front door, and I get my key, and I go, Steve, 149, 149, 144. Now, you have to remember, we've got this amazing little system, which is a rule that I introduced, called 4-minute rule. You can't say negative or critical about anything to anyone for 4 minutes. I open the front door to be confronted by shoes, randomly positioned like a little assault course. It's been laid out for me. By the way, I don't see the shoes. My chimp sees the shoes. It goes, ah! And I should also tell you, you can't appreciate this, they're 4 feet. 4 feet away from something we like to call a shoe cupboard. But they're not in. Guess what's in the shoe cupboard? My shoes, colour-coded left to right. Genius. And so I have to walk past the shoes. Exactly. Where are you going? Where are you going? What's happened? There's my slide gone off. I'm going to walk past the shoes. Are you going to... Go on, crack on. This is good. Be inconspicuous, though. They won't spot you. They won't spot you. Nothing's happening here. So I walk past the shoes, right? This is hard work, because I can't not see them, don't forget. I want to not see them. And I shovel past them, and I get to the kitchen. I can smell food wafting. I go... I open the kitchen door to be confronted by so many pans and mess and mayhem and peel and vegetables and stuff. I can't see any bench. No bench. And I look around, and then I do a Jason Bourne. I scope the kitchen. I go, hang on a minute, there's a lot of mess in here. This is probably enough for a 3-courser on a Friday night. That's not a bad thing. You get a good meal tonight, son. Well done, you should be grateful. Then my wife rises up from behind the cooker, looks at me with her beautiful green eyes, and she smiles. I didn't hear you come in. I go, well, I'm here. What are we having? And she goes, soup. I think, it's soup? How can it be soup? That's impossible. You can't have this much mess with freaking soup. But I don't say that. I'm only 30 seconds in. Can't say a word. 4-minute rule. I go, if there's one thing I was hoping for after a 14-hour day, it was a nice bowl of hot soup. She goes, I'm trying something new. I go, ah! She goes, it's vegan. Ah! I love meat. I love meat. She goes, it's better for your microbiomes. I think, good for my health, thank you. I'm just over the moon. I'm only 30 seconds in. I can't say, oh, that's brilliant. Soup, excellent, nice one. Then amidst all the mayhem and mess, there's a 149. I noticed for the first time in 31 years, my wife has placed a pan on a mat, thus protecting the intense heat from the shiny granite surface. I'm about to say, hey, well done on using a mat there. That's a good thing. And I realize it's not a mat. I'm telling you the freaking truth here. It's not a mat. It's an HMRC letter with a pan on it. With a pan on it. And my chimp goes, ah! And I say nothing because I'm only a minute in. I've got 3 minutes to go. I say, I'm just going to have a shower for 2.5 hours. And I go upstairs. And I have a shower, and while I'm in the shower, magical things happen. I get to reflect and contextualize and think it's your bloody crazy wiring that you inherited from your mother as a child that says the world has to be tidy. And it just doesn't. No one's got cancer, no one's dying. Your wife's great, the world's good, you've got a fridge full of food, you can afford to pay your bills. Let it go, son. And by the time I come downstairs, probably 15 minutes later, head to toe in Russian leather, which is a fragrance, not an outfit. I come downstairs, and the kitchen still looks like somebody's robbed us, but I've said nothing I regret, the mood is calm, and the weekend is a joy. All because I used the 4-minute rule. Now, when I read Steve Peters' book, I was looking for the chapter, as you would, how to get rid of unhelpful wiring. Fair? That's the bit that means the most to me in here. Turns out, you can't. He says it's called a gremlin. It's hardwired, especially in childhood, and it isn't going anywhere. Which is why the 4-minute rule is helpful. Because without the 4-minute rule, I wouldn't have a pause button. And I'd just have me and me chimp. And I could wind myself into a frenzy. I'd get to the front door. I could teach 149 all day. Be positive, be more encouraging. Say the night right thing. Be kind to each other. Walk to my front door and go, whose are these shoes? Whose are these shoes? Am I the only one that knows how to put things away in this house? And if I let me chimp out, I start narrating, tidying up. I'll go, I'll put the shoes in the shoe cupboard because I'm the only one that seems to know where they go. Then I get to the kitchen door and I go, oh, the pan thief's been in. What are we having? Hot water and veg. Lucky me. After a 14-hour day, I was up at 4 o'clock. I drove 4 hours up the M6. I've spoken to 150 miserable teachers for 6 freaking hours. I drive 4 hours home. I get hot water and bread, and a chance to go to prison. You couldn't even mail me letter. Did you do Zumba this morning? That must have killed you for an hour. You couldn't get to the freaking post office to post a letter for me. Well, thanks very much. I go upstairs, I have a shower, I come down. There's a nightmare atmosphere. Guess who's caused it? The motivational speaker. And that's why The 4-minute rule is a really good idea. I've got a question for you. How many of you, be honest, tonight are going to give this little thing, the 4-minute rule, a little test when you get home tonight? We're going to give it a go tonight. There's me. Actually, that's more than 50%. That's about, you're a very troubled group. Right, how many of you, on a serious note, right, so that's really kind of you to say. Good luck with that, by the way. But, sorry, I've got half an hour left, haven't I? Half an hour. I've got to tell you this. Word of warning. I run training events, right, like full-day sessions. This is like a piece of a training event. And it's a 2-day self-awareness course, like a leadership course. And this is on day 1. And so people come back the next day, so I won't get to see you tomorrow, whereas I get to see all the delegates the next day. And I was doing a course, this is a true story, recently, and come back in. I always say to the group, invite them, anything from yesterday, because let's face it, these are strategies for life, aren't they? They're things you can apply anywhere. Anybody get the chance to use this last night? And this woman, spontaneously, she says, Steve, yesterday I loved it. Got loads of stuff. She says, I used the 4-minute rule last night. I says, did you? She says, yeah, it was brilliant. She says, it works absolutely brilliant. She says, I'm converted. I thought, oh, this is great. Would you like to share what you did? She said, well, I've got 3 kids. She says, and my husband is like your Abby. She says, absolutely nightmare. She says, I work all day, I go in, nothing's done, stuff everywhere, dishes in the sink, opening the fridge, empty cartons of stuff that somebody's politely put back in the fridge for me to throw out. She says, and it's just a nightmare. I come in and all I want is somebody to do something. She says, and I went in last night and I was thinking, 4-minute rule, 4-minute rule. So I walked in and I stood in the hall and I said nothing for 4 minutes. And she stood up, literally on the course, and she said, I just did this. And the kids are running around, looking at me. I'm going, like this. 4 minutes. She says, they were obviously a bit worried because I didn't say anything for 4 minutes. And she says, and then I went upstairs and I sat on the bed and I took a few deep breaths and I got changed. And she says, I was up there about 10 minutes and I came down and the house was immaculate. She says, it's bloody brilliant. I says, that's not really what I meant. That's just using fear to get your family to do things, right? Fear and concern. They're probably going, what's the matter with Mummy? Why is she not looking at us? Right? As she says, but the gist of it was, so the point of telling you that little story, that was true story actually, I said to her, I think she exaggerated it, but the point is that it isn't a moment of silence. It's not that at all. It's going in and not looking at your phone. It's going in and not opening the letters that are on the bench. We put all the mail on the bench, and there's an, I've got to open, that's important. You think, hang on, it's been there for 7 hours. It doesn't matter if another 10 minutes goes by. It's a chance to stop and pause and reflect. And it has to be two-way, because if Abby then says to me, I've got 10 things to worry you with, it doesn't work. It's a kind of, unless the kitchen's on fire. If the kitchen's on fire, definitely put that out, right? It's like going to work. If there's a crisis on a ward, you wouldn't know how to do something about it, would you? You'd deal with it immediately. But on a day-to-day basis, it's that ability to stop and pause and think, hang on, if I say something now, I know it'll have repercussions. It's a bit like when, in the past, I'm sure many of you are much better now than you used to be, but you ever sent an email, let your chimp send an email? If you let you go, I'll give you a piece of my mind, send, ha, no, right? And you've copied 1.3 million people in. It's that sort of thing where you realize, had I thought about it, I wouldn't have said it. And I think both, from this morning, the bits I've shared with you, partly having the brother I had, I think when I look back, and as little anecdotes about our John, I think having a John in your life is because John died in 1987, lost him to leukemia, so it's a very, very sad story, really, but I think of it, actually, I wouldn't be the person I am without him, and I've probably got more of a 149 drive because I can see how challenging 15 is if you just stick there all the time, do you know what I mean? It's not like I default to it. I work quite hard at it. I do think about it, and I also think it's completely fine to be miserable. That's the weird thing. You can't get up every day and just be everything to everybody, can you? You know what I mean? And I won't even ask you to put your hand up for this, but there'll be shifts you've gone and think, I'm just not, I just would rather be anywhere else in the world be doing this shift today, right? The last thing in the world I want to do is heal the sick, right? I want to do something else. But you have to, because it's your job and it's responsibility, and that's when your mates stand around you and go, we've got your back. We know you're not feeling yourself today. That's when a great team works, right? Does that make sense? I think that's what teams are about for me. It's not like being, but you know the rugby league lads, they're all hard lads, you know. They're quite tough, really hard grafting lads. They've been through some stuff. But when we won the World Cup, we had a sort of post-analysis, because we'd lost every other match, so now we had a chance to celebrate winning. So we had a little bit of a chat, and what came out was really interesting. It was a 2-hour workshop. One went well, we did this, we did that. We had good wheelchairs, we had great equipment, we had this. There was loads of good stuff. But the one thing that Martin Coyd, who was an ex-military guy, 6'2", built like a bear, big guy, you know, really amazing guy, really. And he turned and he says, you know why we won the World Cup, Steve? And I says, why? He says, because we love each other. And I went, bloody hell, I didn't expect that. Sounds a bit, he says, no, you know what I mean? He says, we care about each other. This team, we care about each other. We've got each other's back. To the point where we'll hold someone up when they're falling, but we'll also give them a little bollocking when they don't do it right. It's that thing which I think we say, hang on a minute, you've let the side down today. And the boss doesn't do it, the peers do it. I thought it was brilliant. That's all 149 in action for me. Right, so if you didn't see any of that, it's on slides. That's me slide. That's me. There you go. That's your chimp. That's me wiring. No, that's me wiring. That's my wife's wiring. That's too big. Right? I'm going to share with you a couple more little things and get you doing a little exercise for 5 minutes. So there is a concept. So here's the thing. Steve Peters, in his book, he says you can't undo hardwired behaviors, like my messy thing. Another one that, so I'll give you an example. You might have hardwired, because you've upbringing things. Is anybody here hardwired to be on time? Like time matters. You know, so if ever you're in public transport and it's suddenly late, you're wound up, even though it's not your fault. You cannot stand the thought of being late for something, right? How many am I, like, on-time people? Got to be on time. How many people in here, you want to be on time, but it's not the end of the world if you get held up. It's just, it is what it is. That's life, right? And doesn't bother you. My son's like that. He's an in-time person. He goes to London every Wednesday because he's got a job now with a company in London, as well as doing his magic. And he gets up, he has to go on the 7:10 train. The train station is 10 minutes from our house. He's got to park his car and get on the train. I sometimes get the same train. I leave the house at 6:15. I'm at the train station by 7:30 and parked, and I'm ready for the train. I can't stand the thought of being late. Can't stand it. Christopher gets up at 6:50. And I can hear the doors banging. I'm thinking, he's never going to make it. He's never going to. And he's clanking around, and I'm here having a shave. Then he's back in his bedroom, and he's back at the game. It's 2 minutes to something. It's 7:10 train. And everything in my being wants to shout through and say, Christopher, fucking hell, go. Then he walks out the house about 3 minutes past 7. And then when he comes in and says, did you get the train? He says, yeah. It annoys you. I want him to be late so badly. But he's in time. And I think if you're driven to be on time, that's another thing. Sometimes that's a really unhelpful thing because you get all stressed and anxious when somebody turns up late. You can't control that. A wise person once said, I do a bit of reading around philosophy at the minute. I'm really enjoying philosophy. And has anybody come across anything stoic, like Stoicism? It's really interesting philosophy to get into. And there's a line in Stoicism which says you've only got control of two things. You've got control of your thoughts and your actions, and then there is everything else. And I think that's a really useful thing to think about. I can only control what I think about something and how I behave based on how I think. I can't control any of you. I can't make you like this. I can't make you like me. I want you to like it, and I want you to get value from it, but I can't make it happen. All I can do is do my best and hope that the impact. And I think that's also helpful for the NHS because how many times do you interact with a patient or a patient's family and you know you can't fix everything? All you can do is your best and go home and as you're brushing your teeth going, I did my best today with the resources I had and the people around me. I did the best I could today. That helps you go to sleep at night. I was doing a session for some consultants recently and some cancer specialists up in Lancashire. And there was a consultant who's been around a while, and I said that to him, and he says, yeah, but when I get home at night, he says, I'm frustrated because I didn't have the manpower. I couldn't spend the time I wanted with the patient. I didn't have the logistical support, so it burns me up. And I says, that's why that sentence is important for you, because you can go home and say, in spite of all of that, I did the best I could, and now it's up to me to allow that to be enough. Right? Otherwise, I'm just going to frustrate myself to hell, because I'm just going to be going on, why don't I do more? Well, you can only do what you can do with what you got, can't you? So that principle applies. So I'm now going to show you how to do a little bit of rewiring. This is a concept called gobbing, right? Now, I'm going to get you to gob on a friend. Right? Now, I'll explain what it stands for. And I'll do it down here because I've got more room. Right, so if you imagine my life is on a timeline, that's the past and that's the future. Anything that's ever happened to me in my life that is good comes under the heading of a gob. And a gob stands for a glimpse of brilliance. It's a psychological principle. I've used it in sports, performance coaching, business coaching, confidence coaching, you name it. It's a brilliant strategy. My daughter's used this. It's like, I'll give you a spin on it in a sec, actually, how she's applied it. And so if I go back in time to this morning, yesterday, weeks, months, years gone by, as far as my memories will go, any moment in time, any event, any achievement, I said celebrate all the wins on and off the pitch. Any success comes under the heading of a glimpse of brilliance, right? So I call it a gob because it's a catchy word. You can call it what you like. I like it, right? It's just a nice catchy word. And what I'm going to get you to do in a sec is pair off and just talk to each other for a couple of minutes each, right? Then we've got about 10, 15 minutes left to just tie up with some practical tips to finish. Now, when I ask people to do this, so you're going to work with somebody, if you're on a table of 5 and there's a table of 1, 3, 6, 7, maybe you could mix up a little bit. Just try and find another person. It's better in twos, right? Better in twos. And so you're going to work with somebody and you're going to basically talk to them for 2 minutes. I'll time it and then I'll say change over, and you're going to tell them a story about something that went well in your life. So a quick question, has anybody ever had anything good happen to them? That's about 12 people have just put their hand up. The rest of you going, I've got nothing, Steve, I've got nothing. And by the way, when I ask people to do this is not just you. Everywhere I've ever been in the world and asked this question, they go, half people go blank, they go, I've got nothing. I literally have nothing. And when I say go, you'll turn to your mate and go, you go first while I think of something. Right? I've got nothing. You've got loads of them. And they don't have to be massive. They're just things that have happened in your life. You go, oh, I did that yesterday with a patient, or I handled that difficult workload, or I managed an understaffed ward, or I don't know, you've done loads of things. Right? These are the things that get you through, the little successes, the little achievements. These are the progressions that you have. So I want you to go back in time, find a little moment, and share the story. Now, the way it works is, right, there's a little structure. It's not just a random conversation. There's a little bit of a structure to it. Set the scene, which is tell the person the context. It was on a ward, it was at home, it was with the family, it was on holiday, whatever the time was. What did you do? And then just notice how it makes you feel. And if you go back in time and tell the story properly, you'll get excited again, because you're revisiting the whole thing again. And don't tell me you can't do it. I saw you through there doing it. You were doing this when you were having a coffee. I've got to tell you this, what happened yesterday. Right? The trouble is when you left your own devices, it's not often brilliant. Right? Because if I said to you, let's not do this. Let's do 30 minutes. And I want you to moan and whine about life. You'd go, Steve, not long enough, son. Not long enough. I could do that all day. Right? Moaning and whining is your default. Looking at the good stuff takes effort. Right? Ruby Wax wrote a book. I'll tell you this one. My mother-in-law was 77. A couple of years ago, she said, Steve, I want a book for my birthday. And she's called Sheila. She says, I want a book for my birthday. And I said, what's it called? She said, it's called How to Be Human by Ruby Wax. I thought a 75-year-old woman at the time wants a book like that. Must be something in it that she's interested in. And Ruby suffered from depression all of her life. And about 10 years ago, trained in psychology, and specifically mindfulness at Oxford University. And she does a little roadshow around the country. And her book is written with a Buddhist monk and a neuroscientist. And the Buddhist monk talks about mindfulness, and the neuroscientist talks about the brain, how it works, a bit like Steve Peters' stuff. And Ruby posts a question to the neuroscientist. She says, some days, and she's had depression all of her life. Really, she was abused as a kid. She's got lots of dark stories. She says, I'll be going through life, and a few minor events really will accumulate, and suddenly the dark clouds descend, and I'm useless for sometimes weeks on end. I can't get over this depression. Why is my brain so fallible? And the neuroscientist, and I'll paraphrase his answer, he says, Ruby, when it comes to good things, your brain is like Teflon. Good things slide away. When it comes to bad things, your brain is like Velcro. Bad things stick. Which is why you can have a really good Monday, a decent Tuesday, a fairly productive Wednesday, an excellent Thursday, and a fantastic Friday morning. And all you need on a Friday afternoon is one meeting for 10 minutes with a mood hoover. You know when you just walk in a room and somebody just sucks the life out of you. It could be a colleague, could be a patient, could be a family member of a patient, and they suck the life out of you. And they drain you, and there's accusations being made, and fingers being, and they're winding you up. And you have the joy of driving 14 minutes home. And you get to your front door, and your partner greets you at the door. Some of you are surprised because you don't have a partner. And they say to you, how was your day, dear? And you say, don't talk to me about my day. I can't stand my job, nothing goes right. Actually, 4.5 days was brilliant. But the bit you remember is the little nugget of the negative moment on a Friday at 10 to 5, by the way, which you carry with you all weekend, right? That's your default to 15, right? Right? And the neuroscientist says there's no evolutionary benefit to focusing on good stuff. He says it's nice to have it, but you don't need to find it. But if stuff's threatened your very existence, which in Ruby's case it had, you will remember it very, very quickly. And it'll come back very sharp. So we have to have a counter, and the glimpse of brilliance is the counter. It's like an antidote to misery. So I'm going to not make you don't have to do this. I want you to, because I promise you there's no downside. Just find a very simple story and say, oh, a couple of days ago this happened. I had this joyful moment with the family, a really high moment day. This was really good for me. Anything at all. Share your story for just 2 minutes. And the only rules are the person you share it with has to look interested. There is nothing worse than telling your best story and they're going, It's not really brilliant, though, is it? Let's be honest, right? Right? Just tell you a story. Then I'm going to give you 5 tips, which I'm going to close on, and one final punchline, which to me is probably the most important thing I'll share from the whole time I've been with you this morning. You ready to do it? Loosen yourselves up. You know you can. Share a little story. Time starts now. You've got 4 minutes. 2 minutes each.
Sorry about this thing.
That's right. I'm finished with it now, really. I'm more or less done.
That's fine.
Is it working still?
It's yeah.
Is it on train?
It's set on no sleep, but the lock screen is organisation light.
What can you do, eh? You did very well. I love the way you came up with it. Two minutes left. 2 minutes left. Okay, you can stop there. Pause, just pause. Now, if you're not quite at the end of your little story, the good news is in about 12 minutes you're going to have a break, at which point tell them how it finished, because they'll want to know. The thing is, if it's a gob, if it's a glimpse of brilliance, by definition, it'll be a good story, right? It's got a good ending, it's got a good, message in it, and if you got into it, right? And by the way, what's it like to receive someone's glimpse of brilliance story when you're just listening? And sometimes they surprise you, especially one of your mates. You go, I didn't know you'd done that. And how many people went back more than a year, 2, 3 years even, or more to find a story to tell? Anybody go quite a long way back? Right? Just bear in mind, the further in time you go back, the more you made it up. Right? You probably weren't even there, if I'm honest. Probably weren't even there. right? But my mother, right, I'll tell you a very quick one. My mum, when she was very depressed, she died really of early stage dementia, very, very long-term effects of depression and paranoia. So she had three very complex conditions. And I used to drive up north, 5 hours in my car. She wouldn't let us in, right? So she wouldn't give us a key. Didn't trust anybody. Eventually, she'd let me in. And she was like in her own head and quiet and, just reflective. And you couldn't get her to speak much. And she was just crying all the time. And so I'll be sitting there desperately trying to work out, how can I do something? What can I do? And I used this technique quite a lot. Now, I never told my mum what a gob was. She would have, if I'd said to my mum, do a gob, she would have slapped me, right? She'd have gone, what are you talking about? But what I could do is use the principle of it, is basically say, do you remember that time he got our John in riding for the disabled? Did I remember that rightly? Did he win a trophy? And she'd go, when he fell off that horse. And she'd tell the story, right? Now, one of the benefits, if there is such a thing, it's a weird way to frame it, but of dementia, certainly early stage dementia, is your longer-term memories remain relatively vivid. Your shorter-term memories are diminished earlier. So being able to go back 20, 30 years to a story that my mum could instantly access got her to put the lights on, if you like, a little bit. Now, I'm not fixing her, I'm not healing her. I left the psychiatrist up to that. But at least I could get her to talk about something positive. And by the time she started talking and reflecting, maybe even a little bit of a glimpse of a smile, you then go, and I'd be saying, blimey, you did a cracking job by our John, didn't you? And then you could lift her spirits. And it was only a little bit, then she might put her coat on, go out for a coffee. And I always thought to myself, if my mum could do a glimpse of brilliance, we can find a glimpse of brilliance. Do you know what I mean? And they don't have to be magnificent. They're just little messages. Now, just to give you a little bit of a tip. So I've got this file called a gob file. If you want to build a culture of positivity, then you need to pause, stop, and record success, right? Not just, personally use one. This is my own personal file. So when anything good happens, it goes in here. Or I've got an email, which is a gob file as well, which is probably more stuff in there. And so my daughter, during second year of dance school, she rang us. Dance school was quite toxic. It was very challenging. And she rang us one day. She said, it was the middle of a week. I remember this vividly because she was on FaceTime. And she never rang us in the middle of a week, which is why it was such an insignificant call. She says, both of our little faces, her little face on the screen. She goes, you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you, which is a very good attention grabber for like a 19-year-old child. And I said to her, go on then. She says, my relationship with food isn't great at the moment, which was a very articulate way of saying, I'm struggling here. Now, I pride myself in being 149 and positive, and I'm thinking, how can my daughter, of all the daughters in the world with the positive, all the stuff we've talked about, the encouragement we give each other, but it doesn't matter. She's in a world which is also surrounded by very toxic people. And she's constantly being told her bum's too big and her body shape's not right and it's not enough. And then she's crying out for help. Now, I think that's a bloody big 15. You don't go, well, at least the rest of your dance is going well, sweetheart. You get in your bloody car and you drive to Chester. And we spent 2 days with Anna crying and talking, and that started a whole journey of conversation, which has led to her having a pretty decent life. She currently lives in China now, working for Universal Studios. She's doing great. But that wasn't an overnight success. That was a lot of chipping away and chipping away and chipping away and reinforcement. And one of the little techniques I said to Anna, so this gob file is where you record and store success, achievements. If somebody gives you praise, it goes in your file. It's all the stuff that records what's gone well. Otherwise, like Ruby Wax says, you forget them very quickly, and the bad stuff rises to the surface. I said to Anna, when you go to bed at night, what do? She has one of these. Have you come across these? They're amazing, right? Because what you can do is, right, they're fantastic. You might not have seen them. You can get information from anywhere, but people can send you things you don't even want all the time. It's brilliant. They can send you rubbish and videos to watch and crap. And it's amazing. You should definitely get one and just keep it on all the time and look at it, right? So my daughter finishes dance school with all the toxic forces, gets to bed, having had a night of exhaustion, maybe watch a bit of telly with her friends. She lives with 3 other dancers. And she gets her phone out and goes to a place called Instagram. It's genius. And she sees that other girls have got better skin, better bodies, better social lives, having more fun, have got agents, are more successful, and generally just doing better than her in life. Then she gets to go to sleep and wake up in the morning before her first wee-wee. She picks her phone up to double-check. She's as unpopular and as unsuccessful as she was when she went to bed last night. It's a reinforcement strategy to make you feel particularly worse than you did before. And I said to Anna, and I'm not one of these dads that rants on, I says, seriously, you do know the stuff on Instagram is made up. You know it's exaggerated. You know it's not real, don't you? She says, Daddy, I'm not stupid. I go, I know you're not. I know you know it's not real, but your chimp doesn't. Because your chimp's going, uh-oh, they're doing better than you. They're doing better than you. They've got a better friendship group than you. They were invited to parties you're not going to. They're being more successful than you. They've been picked for something you weren't picked for. And you go to bed on that. I says, I'm not having it, mate. So I said, do your Instagram by all means. You know, it's toxic, but What about having a gob file? At night, get a little journal. I bought a nice trendy journal, and it says, when you go to bed at night, do me a favour. Just write 3 things down that went well. So you might write down, did a triple pirouette in front of the girls, danced, it was amazing, teacher cheered, girls cheered, ate tuna, sweet corn and pasta, made me feel strong for dance, and finally, watched Gogglebox, had a laugh with the girls. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're going to play 3 movies. The 3 movies are going to be about 15 to 20 seconds long, no more than 1 minute of your life, and they're not on YouTube. They're in here. The first movie will be the movie of you doing that triple pirouette and hearing the girls cheer. The second movie is you tasting that food again that made you feel so strong. And the third movie is the one where you replay the soundtrack of Gogglebox, probably while you're brushing your teeth, and you'll probably smile again and even laugh. Then you go to school and some numpty will tell you your bum's too big, right? But you won't be writing that in your file, because when you get home that night, you write another 3. Within a month, you've got the best part of 100 references written in your own hand that tell you you're doing all right. They're your progress, not perfection statements. They're the things that say, I did well this week, I did well this month, I'm doing a lot of good stuff here, I'm doing all right, right? I'll give you another little tip on this. Don't compare! Seriously, don't compare. You know the advert, the annoying one? Go compare. Well, do compare if you want insurance. But in life, if you want to stifle your performance, the best way to do it is to make comparison. Walk around and go, am I enough? Am I good enough? Oh, not they're taller than me, better than me, better looking than me, more qualified than me. I've had adult nurses come to me over the years, like 20, 30 years experience. I'm going to go for a senior role. I'm going to go for a specialist nurse role. I'm going to go for a blah, blah, blah role. I'm going, really? But I found out there's another woman going for it, and she's got an extra 10 years experience than me. So what's that going to do? That's a comparison game. Are they better than you because they've got 10 more years? Have you ever seen Groundhog Day? Right? I see people do the same thing over and over again. They get 1 day's experience for 10 years, or they get 20 years experience in 10 years. Turn up and do you. That's the only thing I can give you advice for. That's all I've ever done in my life. I've said to Anna, don't be worried about other people. Turn up and do you, girl. And when she was in 2nd year, probably her darkest year of her career in dance, she decided to sign up for a Royal Academy of Dance masterclass in Battersea, where she did money of her exams. It's a cobbled car park. Darcy Bustle has a car parking space. That's how posh it is. And she rings me up, she says, Daddy, I've auditioned. I'm going to audition for a masterclass during the Easter holidays. I says, right, fine. Why are you telling me? She says, it's 500 quid. I says, right, okay, let me know. Anyway, a few weeks later, she gets all the way to London, auditions, she gets picked. 25 dancers get selected for the Royal Academy of Dance masterclass. 25 dancers. We get there at 7 in the morning, starts at 9. I'm driving. Right? Pull up in a car park. Darcy Bustle does indeed have a parking space. There's no one else there. The doors are locked, and Anna's in the back seat. Abby's in the front, and she says, would you come and watch me? You never get to see me dance. I want to see you get to see me dance. I says, Anna, we'd love to see you dance, sweetheart. She's in the back. She's got her bun in, all her ballet stuff on. She's ready to go. And then a car pulled up, and 4 girls got out about 8 o'clock in the morning as the doors were opening. And those 4 girls got out dressed head to toe in Royal Ballet School attire. Now, Anna didn't get in the Royal Ballet School on account of her shape. She didn't get into the Rambert because of her shape. They are 2 arguably of the most prestigious dance schools in ballet in the country. And if my girl or my boy got into the Royal Ballet School, I too would have them wear a tracksuit and shout it from the rooftops, as these girls were doing, just by getting out of a car. And in that split second, Anna fell back in the seat. It took her less than a second for the tears to start pouring on her face. She went from looking forward to not wanting to go in. What had she done in that split second? She'd compared. What did she compare herself to? I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to play the rational game here. She compared herself to 4 tracksuits. That's all she had. She had no more information. Didn't know how good they were, how much flair they had, how much star quality they had. She saw 4 girls that were representing a school that she was rejected from. Not only did she compare, she then added to the story. The story that she added within a split second was, they get into the Royal Ballet School. I was rejected from the Royal Ballet School. That's the elite, the best of the best. I'm at the Hammond. We do dance, we do ballet, we do jazz, we do tap. We're jack of all trades. We're second rate, we're second division compared to these elite dancers. I shouldn't even be in the same room as these dancers. Who am I to stand next to these girls and pretend I'm a dancer when they're so qualified? She got there on merit. She got there because she is good, but that all went out the window. No, I can't even be seen in this room. So we went in, and within 5 minutes, Abby turned to me and says, she's not even here, is she? She's not even here. She was there, but she wasn't there. She came out and sat in the car for her lunch because she didn't want to eat with them. She said, Daddy, I don't know what happened. I couldn't even warm up properly. I didn't think it would be good enough. I said, darling, you've got to go in there and do your thing. Not once in the years we've gone to the Royal Ballet and Opera House and watched Lauren Cuthbert's son, the main dancers in the world, the best dancers in the world, you've never come out once having cried and watched them perform and said, I like Lauren Cuthbert's son because her turnout's good. You don't. You like her because she's beautiful to watch, because she's got star quality, because she sparkles, not because she's got freaking technical ability. That's a given at your level. As you turn up and just dance like you dance. That's all you have to do. And you'll enjoy it. And it doesn't matter what they think or what you think, because you're doing you. That's all I've ever done. I do me. If my wife came in here now, it would be a shock. And you said to her, is he really like this? She'd go, yes. She has to live with this, right? It's me. And years ago, I got to speak at the National Sales Conference. 700 sales directors of companies all over the world. If I do my best 30 minutes, I get a lot of money. I get booked. I wanted to do my best 30. And I got phoned up 2 weeks before because they always have a celebrity to make people want to come. And this year, they had Charlie Duke. He's the 10th man on the moon. The 10th man on the moon. He's got footage of himself falling down and getting back up again on the moon. Look him up. I'm not making this up. And I went, really? She says, I want you on in the afternoon because you're lively and you'll keep them awake. Then Charlie's coming on for the last hour. I thought he's got the last slot. People always remember the last thing they've seen. And I'm on second last, and I haven't even got the 25-meter breaststroke. And so I sat in bed and I was chanting Abby and I said, I don't know, Charlie Duke's on. How am I going to keep with that? And my wife turned to me and says, walk your own bloody talk. You always tell people not to compare. Just do your thing, man. Right? I was a sales rep in Sunderland. I used to sell pharmaceuticals to GP practices and get rejected by receptionists. Every single day of my life. I've got character. And then I was lying in bed and I had an epiphany and I realized it's not that hard to get up on the moon. There's no freaking gravity, is there? So you might have a video, if I fell off here, that's hard to get back up from, right? And I went there and I did my best 30 minutes. I got ranked the top speaker at the event and I loved every second of it. And the one thing I had to do was just remind myself, just do you. You're enough. I say to my daughter all the time, you're enough. And if you do the 4-minute rule to calm your brain when you're under pressure, and you play good movies every morning and every night before you go to bed and when you get up in the morning, you can counter this toxic world just a little bit better. You build a psychological armor, and 149 becomes a habit. And that's why at 61 years old, which I'll be in 2 days, did I mention that? Right? I think that I'm not unusually positive at all. I'm a normal bloke. I just practice positivity. I hope some of this stuff has stuck for you. I hope you've got some tools to take away. I'll send follow-ups, I'll send references, I'll send my details. If you want to get in touch privately, please get in touch and I'll respond back to you. Thank you so much for listening. Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Never fails to disappoint. Well, I was checking that you were still on the page.
I do disappoint a lot, I know that. My wife says that to me a lot.
There's your phone as well this time.
Oh, thank you very much. I was trying to make exchanges with you, but just exchange phones.
Never fails to make a massive impact in the room that he's in. And as I said, he was, probably scored highest speaker last year, so it was always something that we wanted to bring back. So I hope you've got a lot from that session. We've now got a comfort break, and if we can be back, I'm going to check now, 11 o'clock, I think.
11:15.
It's 11:15. We've got return by 11, so my slides are wrong. 149. Go and get a coffee.
Yeah. Thank you. Enjoy your coffee.
want to say a massive thanks to her, because you'll see through her presentation the impact that it's had across HDFT, and it's really important that that's shared with you all this morning. So I will hand over to Brenda.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Emma. And thank you, Steve, for your presentation earlier this morning. It was inspiring and definitely a tough act to follow, so thanks for that. So I'm delighted to present to you today about making positive changes, our workforce journey here at HDFT. And we've done so much. There's so much that I could say, but what I've tried to do today is give you examples and case studies. So I will be sort of streamlining the presentation down to certain areas within our nursing workforce. So I'm going to talk to you today about why safer staffing is important. I'm going to look at what evidence-based tools are used at HDFT and why we use them, more importantly. An overview of our workforce journey. Specifically, I'm going to look at the adult inpatient wards. I'm going to look at some case studies of our workforce changes using our Safer Nursing Care tool. The Safer Nursing Care tool you might hear referenced as the SNCT. We're going to look at our nursing workforce and our workforce journey. And then we're going to look at safe care implementation and then how we can impact in the future our enhanced care requirements. Get the clicker the right way, I'll start. So as we all know, there's a requirement to deliver safe, sustainable, high quality and effective care. And back in 2013, we'll probably all remember the public inquiry at the Mid-Staffordshire hospitals and the failings in nursing care. I'm going to move that mic because it feels like I'm going to eat it. And the Francis inquiry that identified the need for more robust governance around workforce. Then in 2018, NHSE produced the Developing Workforce Safeguards document. Now, the challenges at Harrogate are the same all over the country, with high vacancy rates, workforce shortages, high agency usage, financial challenges, and lack of governance and processes. So we've got this document in 2018, but very few trusts enacted that. So the Chief Nursing Officer for England at the time developed the Safer Staffing Fellowship. And that was to help the development of safer staffing resources and support trusts in delivering the expected standards. So the boring bit over now, if that's your learning. So we move on to the establishment review tools. So we've got many establishment review tools that we use at Harrogate and across the country. As I've said before, they've got the Safer Nursing Care tool, which you might hear referred to as the SNCT. And probably the most well-known are the ones is the adult inpatient ward. And that's the one probably that we've developed the most and come on our furthest journey. We've also got Children's and Young People SNCT, and we're in the process at the moment of looking at that data and developing the Children's and Young People inpatient workforce. We've got the Emergency Department SNCT, and we've done some great work with ED. We've moved quite significantly in terms of their safer staffing requirements in ED. We've just undertaken our Birth Rate Plus, a little thing for the midwives over here, Birth Rate Plus review, and we're in the process of triangulating that data right now. We've got the AFPP standards for theatres. We've got the GPIC standards for critical care. We have, hopefully coming back soon, I don't know if we've got any community nurses here today. Any community nurses? Oh, we have the Community Nursing Safer Staffing tool coming back in the new year. It's currently been suspended. Specialist nurses, we job plan. Day case units, it's normally a time task model. And for our outpatients department, we've no specific tool, but we do link our activity to the demand. So why is it important? Why have we got these tools? And it's because we need to move to evidence-based establishments, making sure that we're moving away from this finger-in-the-air approach. We've got to link it to quality, safety, and performance. So we're moving away from a finger-in-the-air approach to an evidence base. Now, as Emma mentioned, we didn't used to have my role, so a workforce role. But it wasn't until 2021, when our new chief nurse came into the organisation, that workforce actually became a focus across nursing, midwifery and AHPs. In June 2021, we adopted the Adult Inpatient Safer Nursing Care Tool. We undertook our first data collection later that year, and then following data collections in March and October of 2022. We got a reduction in temporary workforce requirements and a reduction in our temporary workforce requirements, reducing our reliance whilst improving the quality on the wards. And we continue to undertake the biannual SNCT establishment reviews, making sure we've got assurance around safer staffing establishments. Although I am a CNO Safer Staffing Fellow, a little shout out here, we have got another one in the making. Charlie over here will start her journey as a fellow in the new year. So we move on to the exciting bits. So this is a case study around workforce changes using the SNCT. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see a bar chart. And the bar chart, if you look at it's meant to be blue, but it looks a bit grey. So the blue and the orange at the left, this was our historical budget for one of our 30-bedded frailty wards. If you look at the table over on the right, this was the staffing template pre-SNCT. And as you can see there, the registered nurse establishment mirrors exactly the care support worker establishment. So what we've got there is a 50-50 staffing ratio. You've got the nutritional assistant hours that were quite limited. We had 7.5 hours of nutritional assistant hours on the ward. 22.5 hours, although we did over-recruit that at a cost pressure. Management time was very limited. It was almost non-existent. And although there was a budgeted 7.5 hours for this ward, the ward manager very rarely got that and often had to work clinically. The skill mix and establishment design was poor, with no evidence base. And vacancies for registered nurses and care support workers were really high, including the turnover rates as well. So our care hours per patient day were, at this time, ranging from 5.5 to 5.8, which is well below the national average. And day techs were being submitted for staffing incidents or near misses. These were usually in relation to the limited skills of agency workers, and the feedback that we were getting was around their inability to deliver IV drugs or medication rounds, which obviously put pressure on the substantive staff. There were high levels of temporary workforce and unfilled shifts. There was poor staff morale and high levels of burnout and sickness. Other quality outcomes could be improved, and we felt could be improved, and there was omissions in care. Now I'm just going to take you back before I move on to the chart on the left, and you can see the SNCT recommendations. So as you can see there, the RN is the blue is slightly higher now than the orange. So following triangulation of that data that you just saw there, a new staffing template this frailty ward. As you can see from that, there's a downward trend in demand, We've got better fill rates and much less agency. And if this is the first time you've seen one of these charts, the red is the agency, the blue is NHSP, and the grey is the total demand or left unfilled. So why have we seen a reduction in the temporary workforce usage? And mainly, this is due to filling our vacancies substantively, which is fabulous. But also, we've done a lot of work around reducing agency usage. We implemented and designed the agency cascade, which we still use today, reviewing that regularly and reducing the visibility on that cascade for agency workers. Now, what that means is the length of time before a shift is worked that a worker can actually see the shift. So we've reduced that length of time. Previously, these workers could see the shifts as soon as you put them out to NHSP, which could be up to 3 months before the shift would be worked. They could be picked up by an agency member of staff before NHSP, and that was their shift, they'd booked on it. So what we did is we reduced the visibility, giving opportunity to NHSP workers first to pick up those shifts. We also introduced agency bumping, which meant that if an agency member of staff picked up that shift, that it was still visible to NHSP and they could bump the agency worker off. By reducing that visibility, the agency workers didn't like that. Understandably, they wanted to know when they were working and bringing money, pay the wages, pay the bills. So they were complaining to their agencies about that, which then prompted the agencies to come to us to ask for more visibility. What we did is we would increase the visibility slightly for them if they reduce their rates. And because we've done this over the last 18 months, we've driven down our rates by an average of £20 per hour, and all our RN00 agencies are now CAP compliant. This was one thing that we got feedback from our staff, how unfair it was that agency staff members were coming to work and fill shifts, working alongside them, getting paid double the amount of money, but actually providing half the service. We've not used any care support worker agency since early 2023, and I know it's quite big in the media at the moment about hospitals stopping using a care support worker agency, but we're already there. We've also got padlocks and tighter controls of staffing through workforce redeployment methods and measurement of acuity and dependency, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. But first of all, I just wanted to do a comparison of the pre and post changes, just so that we can really see as a visual where we were and where we are now, just on this one frailty ward. So our care hours per patient day, as I said before, were between 5.5 and 5.8. Currently, they run between 7.1 and 7.3. Management time on the frailty ward has increased from 7.5 to 22.5 hours a week. Our skill mix has been reviewed, and we now have a more senior team, reducing the Band 6 establishment from 2.87 to 4. Our nutritional assistant hours have increased from 0.6 whole-time equivalent to 1.4, and we cover the whole 7 days now. The staffing ratio from a 50-50 split of RNs and care support workers has changed, as I say, from 50-50 to 60-40, which is the evidence-based recommendation. Our registered nurse vacancies on the last, before we uplifted our establishments, were 8.16 whole-time equivalent. They're now currently 0. Similarly with the care support workers, there were 3.3 and now they're 0. So the SNCT, before the changes were made, the quality data came back that there were 10 falls on this ward in that 1 month. The last SNCT that took place with the new establishments, there were 4. Staffing day techs, before the changes were made, there were 5 staffing day techs. And the recent SNCT, there was none. Temporary workforce, so our RN and care support worker changes, temporary workforce, the cost on a monthly basis was reaching 97,000 a month, with 44,000 of that being agency, just on this one ward. Last month, so October, there was 33,000 spend of temporary workforce, with only £330 of agency. Now, whilst this is a really good picture, you might all be sat there, and the observant of you will be thinking, well, why have we still got 33,000 a month of spend if we've no vacancies? So, yes, we've got short-term sickness, and that will account for some of that. Though we have also, though we're fully recruited, we do have some people in supernumerary transitioning into their role. But the majority of this is down to our enhanced care requirements. And again, I'm going to come on to that in a minute. So our nursing workforce. So in addition to staffing levels that were finger in the air, the Trust had just navigated a major pandemic. So not having the right establishment through that didn't help. And we did have low staff morale. We had staff that were burnt out, people experiencing low job satisfaction, there were omissions in care, and nurses felt fear of losing their registration. We had high sickness levels, we had low staff engagement, high turnover rates, and high vacancy levels. So following the SNCT establishment uplifts, there was anecdotal evidence that things were starting to change. I was witness to this when I was walking into work one morning, and with a nurse walking to the ward, and she was about to start her shift. She was describing to me how fabulous the new staffing establishments were, and that she was previously thinking about leaving and seriously considering that. As in her words, things were terrible. But now we have time to care for our patients, and it feels safe, and we're in a much better place. So anecdotally, you will probably have heard these similar things yourself. However, we do like measurable evidence. Our measurable evidence includes improved staff survey results. So staff engagement now is above the national average on our staff survey results. We've got reduced sickness absence, we've got reduced turnover rates, and we have now got a reduced vacancy gap. So our investment in staff to support this and to encourage a substantive workforce at Harrogate, we've got an award-winning preceptorship and clinical induction. We've got highly decorated practice educators to support students, registered nurses, and care support workers. We've got professional nurse advocates. We've got legacy mentors. We've got improved access to wellbeing and support. We've got ward managers now that have allocated time so they can actually support their staff. We've got improved staffing ratios and a substantive workforce, predominant substantive workforce. So we've showcased all the positive changes, but what about the ongoing work? So, in addition to using the SNCT for the biannual establishment setting and assurance, we now use it to provide an evidence base for our daily workforce requirements. Measuring acuity and dependency of our patients, which then provides us with a real-time staffing requirements, although we need to remember to add our professional judgment to that. In early 2024, NHSE introduced the new levels of care, SNCT. And since that introduction, we've gone through quite a large-scale training programme to retrain everybody in SNCT and the new levels of care and pass their inter-rater reliability. In addition to the 1B line of sight enhanced care requirements, which are already calculated in our establishments, there's now 1C for arm's length and 1D for 2 staff at arm's length. So accurately measuring and ensuring validity, reliability and usability of our enhanced care requirements is our current focus. So, enhanced care across our adult inpatient wards. And as we refer back to the slide earlier, when we had that £33,000 in 1 month of spend, and I said that that equated to a large percentage of enhanced care. So, a high temporary workforce is used for our enhanced care. We don't use substantive workforce. So, for all our hours related to enhanced care, it is generally temporary workforce. And this has a significant financial impact with no budget allocated to that at all. We've no robust review processes, and we've got unclear governance processes regarding shift requests. We also have no specific enhanced care training for staff providing that direct care. So what are our next steps? So what we would like to do is engage all stakeholders to review our current position and engage in a next steps approach. Improve quality of enhanced care data to assist decision making and workforce modelling. Review and improve the assessment documentation for an enhanced care. And we've got great engagement and from Vicky and her team in Fundamentals of Care team in starting that work. And look at how other trusts are addressing the above issues. And I think we can learn a lot from what other areas have done and how they have managed these same issues. So what are my key messages? And I think that first of all, just to say we have come a long way and we've made such an impact and we've made some really positive changes across not just this ward that I've done a case study on, but across the whole of the nursing, midwifery and AHP workforce in the work that we have started to do or that we have done. But safe staffing is a constant journey. And we've come a long way and we've improved quality, safety and performance. However, we will never be done, and there are always improvements to be made. It should never be seen as a task and finished piece of work. Safer staffing can be a motive for all involved, helpful, but just because we have one doesn't mean that everyone knows about it. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands or test anybody today, but it might be worth just thinking about that. Quality and reliable data is key, but we need everyone on board to develop this. And just to say a big thank you to all the staff that assist with the successful implementation of the SNCT and the other establishment tools, and for all the fabulous work that you do each day to ensure the best possible care for our patients. Finally, I just wanted, while I have this opportunity, to plug my Fundamentals of Safer Staffing e-learning on Learning Lab. If you want to know more about some of the things, or you've heard things today you might think, oh, I'm not sure about that, please look at this e-learning on Learning Lab. It gives you a greater depth of knowledge around the information that I've presented today. Any questions? So I couldn't hear, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So there's already been discussions around AHPs with Liz, so with our lead here, and looking at how we can It's not, so the SNCT is not transferable to AHPs, and it's indeed not transferable across other areas of nursing. So for AHPs, we have to look at that very differently in terms of what sort of workload. And your workload predominantly comes from that sort of outpatient model. So it is very much modelling on the demand, and it's something that myself and Liz have had discussions about and how we can look at job planning in the future for AHPs.
Do you want me to come back in a bit more on that?
You can, yes. Just choking.
Don't have to shout and cough. We have looked at it, and it's something we're going to start a piece of work on next year. There will be some guidance coming out from the Chief Allied Health Professionals Office around safer staffing for AHPs, but we've yet to see that yet. But a guy called Steve Tolan, who you may remember from last year, who works in that office, he is producing that piece of work, so we should get that in the new year sometime. But it will be difficult to have it in the same way that the SNCT works, because there's so many different professions and different ways of working across the AHP services. And where we're going to start is with job planning and make sure we have a really robust e-job planning, which will then give us the basis of looking at what our actual establishments are before we actually start to look at what capacity we have got from those establishments. Does that help, Vicky? Okay.
Hello, thank you for that. It was really interesting. I'm just wondering how this tool has helped you go from the vacancies that you had to 0, and also what was the time frame from A to B?
Thank you. Sorry, what's your name?
My name's Karen Sewell, and I'm working research, and we're having a very difficult time getting our CTAs and registered nurses vacancies filled.
Thank you, Karen. So for nursing, it's multifactorial, actually. There's a few reasons for our transition from having a large number of vacancies on our inpatient wards to 0. The SNCT directly relates to that in terms of our nurse to patient ratio. So we, with the care hours per patient day increase, what you actually also see is the reduction in the amount of patients that each nurse needs to look after. This, anecdotally, you'll hear the nurses talk about this, as well as there being a nurse in charge on the ward as well to coordinate nursing care, and how this has transformed their lives on the wards. Referring back to the workforce information that are presented around morale, this has increased morale and increased they want to come and work at Harrogate rather than other providers. And what we're seeing now is a domestic pipeline of qualified nurses with knowledge and experience wanting to come and work at Harrogate. So we actually now have to tighten our vacancy, actually make it a little bit tougher, the process, because we're getting lots of applications. We've got very few vacancies. So it is around that experience, the working experience, being able to provide the level of care, reduce those omissions and give good job satisfaction.
We had a sort of multifactorial approach, as Brenda said. So not only did we look at internal recruitment, we had a large cohort of internationally educated nurses, as Brenda described earlier on, but we also did a lot of work with student nurses, making them have a really good experience here. And we have a Harrogate pathway, so we've managed to be one of the sort of the limited organisations that managed to offer quite a lot of jobs to their student nurses who've popped out the other end as well, because they've had a really good experience on the ward because of the things that Brenda's just described around the staffing and the fact that they've got experienced people that will be able to support them on the ward. So I think they're the other things that have added to that as well.
So yeah, I'm happy to pick up questions afterwards. It's not a problem. Or if you want to email me, that's absolutely fine.
What's the timeline for looking at the safer staffing for like day units and the outpatients areas?
So that would, are you talking in relation to the chemo unit or more of an outpatient?
I'm talking about the chemo unit.
Chemo unit. So that is a time task, and although we do want to start doing that on a more frequent basis, like we do with the inpatient areas department, other departments that have an SNCT, what we do know is you have quite a robust system already of time task and a very good system. So obviously you've got Bookwise. Having said that, it does need reviewing, and it is something that does need picking up on a regular basis. As I said, it isn't just a one-off. None of these establishment reviews are a one-off. We do need to keep on top of them and make sure that we have got the right allocation of registered and unregistered workforce to provide that care. Okay.
Thank you. I think, as Brenda's mentioned, the impact of SNCT, I think, has been evidenced. However, the acuity and dependency of patients change all the time. And I think one of the main things, just picking up the point about the AHP element, we did have a conversation with the Royal College of OTs and physios when they came to visit us recently around perhaps there's a difference between the narrative around safe staffing and effective staffing, because if you speak to any of the medical staff, they'll ask for a same tool as what we've got for nursing because they want it for medics. And there isn't anything that exists. But I think, as Brenda's just described, we're able to articulate the impact of having the right nursing establishments and what that means for patients and what it means for staff. And that's really powerful. So we do need to make sure we're able to drive the agenda around allied health professionals and also medics, because there isn't actually an equivalent. So it's something that Jackie's really keen on, as well as the medical director for Harrogate, in how we ensure that we've got it across all of our workforce areas. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Saj to you. Saj is the Deputy Chief Nurse at Airedale. I mentioned at the very beginning, in the introduction, that we have developed across West Yorkshire an advanced practice framework that we are looking to take forward at Hdft. And certainly early in the new year, we'll be looking for a leadership post associated with this. But Saj led that work on behalf of Wyatt Chief Nurses, and he's here to present that to you today. So welcome, Saj.
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, all. How are you all? Good. Okay, so great to be here to present the advanced practice framework we developed for Wyatt organizations. Is everyone familiar with what is Wyatt? So it's the West Yorkshire Association of Acute Trusts. There's a 6 trusts in West Yorkshire and Harrogate joined together to bring a sustainable long-term health plans and the pathways, patient pathways for the better care of our patients in this region. So there's a lot of work streams around that. I think currently there is 12 work streams open now, and one of them is the advanced practice. The chief nurses group of this Wyatt organization, which is Emma, asked me to lead on a piece of work to bring a framework for advanced practice. As you probably know, the advanced practice varies between organizations, between departments, within region. So there is no consistency around the advanced practice, we noticed, and that is why there was a need for a framework for all these organizations. Out of these 6 organizations, I worked in 3. Every time I move hospitals, or if anybody who moved hospitals, you know that you'll be asked to repeat or redo your mandatory trainings like moving and handling and infection prevention and control. You always think that I've done that a month ago in the other organization, why I need to do it in here? Is that true? Is it anyone experience that? Yeah. So it's the same principle in the advanced practice as well. People complete their competencies, and when they move organizations, they'll be asked to do that. This is our competencies, you need to complete these. So trying to get a standardized approach, which I'm glad to say that the Chief Nurses Group in West Yorkshire and Harrogate and the Medical Directors Group in West Yorkshire and Harrogate agreed and approved to use these in our organizations. So we'll be following that. So what we did was to start this piece of work, started a scoping of what is happening. We wanted to know what is happening everywhere, and we've done a scoping work in August 2023. I got a couple of slides to show what it showed. Is that visible at all? Okay, so this is the current number of advanced practitioners working in the organizations, which you can see Airedale, Bradford, Hdft with LTHT with the 208. That shows the size of the organizations as well, and 67 in Mid Yorkshire and the Hdft 26 at the time we collected the data, or the data we provided to us. So we received the responses from all these organizations. The questions we asked, does the trust have a corporate advanced practice lead? 4 organizations had a trust lead. 1 wasn't sure at the time. You can see some of the responses to question number 4. How much of this person's time is dedicated to a corporate lead role? It varied, from unsure or none to 80% of the time. We asked the question, is the post permanent or temporary? In 4 organizations, it was permanent. Then in 1 organization, it was temporary. Does the trust have a specific advanced practice policy? Again, you can see there was a different responses we received. Trust have a governance and assurance framework in place for advanced practice. Again, in progress, in development, it wasn't fully embedded in most organizations in Wyatt and Harrogate. And we asked about the grades, what the trainee ACPs start. In some organizations, they started at this band 6, some organizations band 7. And even within the organizations, we found it is very in different departments. And we asked about ACPs, what grade they are employed at. Again, that is different. What is the organizational structure for advanced practitioners? What is the line of accountability? Again, some of them reported to nursing, some of them through the medical line, and a mixture of both. Some places it wasn't clear about who they report to. So based on all those, and we developed the advanced practice framework, we brought the corporate leads of all organizations together, and we had the discussions. And this framework is mainly operationalizing document of the national policies. We have had the national policies and guidance for a number of years, but that is not been operationalized in any of the organizations. So this framework published in July 2024, and these are the contents in the framework. I haven't got the slides for each of them, but I'll go through what is included, what is in the advanced practice framework. The glossary term, the introduction, what is the advanced practice and the purpose of this document. As I said, the purpose of this framework is to bring some kind of a consistency and standardizing the advanced practice across all these 6 organizations. The regulation and the accountability. As you probably know, currently advanced practice is not regulated. The NMC is currently reviewing. The HCPC decided that they are not. The NHS England have got something called the Advanced Practice Badge, or Centre for Advancing Practice Badge. That is the only one that is available, recognition or credential what we have. So it's not regulated, but it may get regulated in future for some professions. And this framework, if we implement it, will be ready for that regulation if it comes in practice. The roles and responsibility of advanced practitioners, the advanced practice training. that was something we detailed around that. The advanced practice training, you will see that the people doing the training in their own times, and there is a trainee ACP programs, there is a differences in the selection procedures, and we got the apprenticeship routes now, non-apprenticeship routes in there. Most recently, what we have seen is the apprenticeship route for the trainee ACP programs when we advertise that. And I just wanted to comment something on that, which I'm very passionate about. The apprenticeship program, which requires colleagues to have GCSEs, English and Maths. And I heard from the previous presentation and from the workforce that we have recruited a lot of internationally educated nurses to this organization. When it comes to apprenticeship, GCSE English and Maths, none of these colleagues who recruited from internationally, if it is from India, Philippines, or some of the African countries, they won't meet that criteria. They won't be able to progress. If we strictly say that we need GCSE English and Maths to apply for advanced practice program. And I have seen in some of the organizations, including my organization I currently work, putting down as a GCSE English and Maths as an essential criteria when they're advertising for the trainee ACP roles. Even people can't put their application in. If you do that, please don't do it. That's my humble request. That is one of the biggest barriers. And I challenged these when I was a regional supervision assessment lead for NHSE Health Education England nationally, and I was the chair of the National ACP inclusivity group. And I challenged it, took it to NHS England. We had the roundtable discussion with the CNOs, and it is a rule of the Department for Education, which nobody could change. So what we did at the time from the Center for Advancing Clinical Practice was, if a candidate, if a person, a staff member who is successful otherwise, and the university is happy to offer them a place, then the NHSE agreed, or HE agreed to fund that post, then we don't need to use the apprenticeship levy to fund them. So hundreds of staff since then have used that benefit from the NHS England, or that funding from NHS England, to support their studies. So it shouldn't be a restriction. But if that funding is stopping because of the new government, then they probably need to do the level 2 functional skills to do that, but that the organization can support them to do that rather than restricting them to or stopping them from applying that. And that is one of the reasons, being an internationally educated nurse myself, that is one of the ambitions of the nurses who are migrating to this country to progress in that. So what we did in this framework is we given both options, advanced practice, apprenticeship program, and the non-apprenticeship program. So when, depending on the candidate or the successful candidate, you can choose on, you can support on the colleagues to reach on that. So that is the training or recruitment to trainee ACP programs. The other one, the framework, what we discussed about is the starting point of the trainee ACP program. Many organizations had a band 7 starting point, which the framework now states that we start them at the band 6. The reason for that is trying to be more inclusive. You may see band 5 nurses in this organization or Hdft who have excellent clinical skills and worked for maybe 6 years, 6, 7 years, or 10 years, who didn't want to go into a leadership role, but want to progress their career in a clinical route. And this is a good opportunity for them, giving them the opportunity to start at the band 6 level as a trainee ACP, and on completion of the required skills, then they can progress to band 7 in year 1. And that is how the framework, or that is what we put down as a framework. The other one, what we talk about in the framework is when we recruit trainee ACPs, the people were not getting, or the trainees were not getting high quality supervision. And it is really important that if you need good performing, highly qualified advanced practitioners, they need to have high quality supervision. The framework says that they need to have this supervision. We got 2 types of coordinating supervisors and workplace supervisors. historically, the coordinating supervisors were the consultants who were providing the supervision. The framework, we suggested that our experienced advanced practitioners can be coordinating supervisors. And that is another key point in this framework. And also, we suggest or recommending, the framework recommending that 0.25 PAs should be given for the supervision time per week. That is around equates to 1 hour quality supervision time every week. It can be joined together 4 hours every month, sitting down with a supervisor, monitoring their progress. And that is something we put in the framework in there, make sure we do that. Another one, I missed the, advanced practice training we talked about. Then the 9.1, the Center for Advancing Practice digital badge. There was loads of discussions going around across the country and a bit toxic and a bit challenging, especially on social media or Twitter, around the badge. If you're not aware, people who have been working as advanced practitioners for the last 15, 20 years have been asked to do a gap analysis and to go and do an additional training to work as advanced level practitioners. At the same time, a person completing the training, coming out of the university this month or next month, will come out as an advanced practitioner with a badge, which is a bit contradictory, and that is not valuing the existing advanced practitioners and their knowledge, their skills. So in the framework, we didn't make it mandatory to do the advanced practice or achieve the advanced practice badge, but it's recommended that the new ones, the newly qualified or new advanced practitioners coming out of the universities from the accredited universities will come out with a badge. But if there is another regulation coming in, then probably everyone will need to achieve those competencies. But to provide the assurance, what we're suggesting is everyone should have a competency. The existing advanced practitioners in the organizations may not have any competency or any documented competency. So to protect the practitioner, to protect the employer, and to protect the public, the framework recommends that everyone should have a competency framework. And that is your evidence to say that I have been assessed to say that I'm qualified to do this. And also the CQC will be asking for those questions because it's mandated, CQC mandated this advanced practice when they do their inspections. So there is loads of online portfolios available. The one of them which I recommend is a practitioner C portfolio. There is information about that is in there in the framework where you can use, and that is accredited one from the Center for Advancing Clinical Practice, accredited competencies in there or credentialed competencies in there. Or some of the specialities, they have their own competencies. That is ED have got RCOM competencies in there. Critical care have their own FACOM competencies in there. If where it is available for any specialities with the Royal Colleges, we suggest that, recommend that they continue with that competencies. The ones they don't have it, they can use either PEP or a local one if we can develop one. But if we're talking about standardizing, I suggest we go with the practitioners' e-portfolio competencies. And that is the portfolio of competencies. And I always say that you probably have seen that there is a bit of a discussion around the medical associate professions and physician associates around recognizing, matching that. So in view of that, in view of the NMC that is going to regulate the profession, everyone who is working at advanced level should have a competency portfolios. Again, the question comes around advanced. The previous organization I worked, we had around 23 job titles which started with advanced or contain the word advanced in that. And this framework will help with standardizing those terminologies as well. So we use advanced clinical practitioner, we got advanced neonatal practitioner, we got advanced critical care practitioner, we got advanced physiotherapy practitioner, advanced occupational therapy practitioner, so advanced dietitian, advanced pharmacist. So if anybody who is working within the multi-professional framework, in that framework, what is defined in the advanced practice, then the job titles as nationally recommended, it will be changing to advanced practitioner, and then suffixing with their role, their professional role. So if you're a nurse, then the suffix to with advanced practitioner nurse, that is for the ESR coding, not for your badges. Your badge will say advanced practitioner, but for the ESR coding, there is a guidance provided by NHS Digital. So in future, if you want to know how many advanced practitioners you have in a Harrogate who are physiotherapists, it's easy to pull that information from ESR, and that will inform the future workforce development. So that is another piece of work I probably need to do in organizations to coding all advanced practitioners correctly on ESR. The training routes, I talked about that, the banding, like a band 6, band 7, or 8A on completion. So starting at band 6, that will give opportunity for people. It won't be a big jump for people from 5 to 7. So it'll be starting at 6, then 7 at completion of 1 year, and on completion of the advanced practice program, it will be 8A. So each of these time, 20% of the time is protected for the university study time, and or for your own supervision time, so that would be equating to 7.5 to 15 hours. The rest of the time can be used. Some of the organizations, depending on the specialty, they use as a completely supernumerary, but some places they use, or the people continue to work in their substantial role or equivalent roles in the organizations or in the department. Or they can carry out the roles or the skills that they achieved from the training. So for example, if we go into a medical ACP training post in the year 2, they may be able to join their SHO rota if they have the right skills and the competencies signed off. And that needs to be decided within that department and the individual areas. So that is about banding. Then study leave and the supernumerary period, that is minimum recommendations, what we set in the framework, and how much you can give, that needs to be discussed, decided in the local department. It may change between departments. And uniform professional identity, that is normal supervision and assessment. We talked about that. Advanced practice supervision. Again, that is a key in this, because if you don't receive or provide a high quality supervision, you won't be able to produce high quality, highly performing advanced practitioners. The delivery of a supervision time, supervision learning events, and work-based assessment. In the past or historically, there was no evidences or no work-based assessments completed for advanced practitioners, apart from the Royal College ones. So there is a list of or number of workplace assessments colleagues need to complete before they're completing each year. That is listed in the framework as well. So the supervised learning events, that needs to be documented. That will provide some kind of assurance. Then trainees requiring additional support or concerns, so there is guidance around how we can support somebody or trainee who is failing or struggling to progress, how we can support those trainees, what the reasons are. That is there listed in there as well. The non-medical prescribing, which is normal, probably you have that on it to talk about that. Radiology imaging and non-medical referral, that is one of the challenges faced by ACPs in organizations, where some organizations, they're able to refer for x-rays. Some organizations, they can do MRIs. Some organizations, they can't do MRIs. So it's a real challenge between departments around what they can do and what they can't do. So this framework will or provide some clarity around that, who can refer to radiology investigations. The annual appraisals, evidence capability and completion of training, annual review of capabilities and training, advanced practitioners, At the moment, we don't have any assurance process to say that the trainee ACPs are progressing or they have the competencies or achieve the competencies they need to at that stage. So this annual meeting with the trainee, the supervisor, the manager, that will provide them with it's something called a CAS process. The forms and the process is attached with the framework in there, and it's recommended that we use that as well. Workforce planning and recruitment. Probably every organization, we are very reactive in going for the trainee ACP roles, but at the end of the training, we probably won't know where we're going to employ them, and that is a key question. So it's recommended that when we're starting for a trainee ACP role, need to have a proper business case to support that, so that we know on completion of this training, is a 3-year course, on completion of the training, they will have a job as advanced practitioner at the end. And that is a key thing to invest in the trainee ACP programs. Recruitment of trainee advanced practitioners. You talked about recruitment of qualified advanced practitioners. Again, it's the same again, if you have completed the competencies and the capabilities in another organization, whether you'll be able to transfer it across. If you've done it in Leeds, you can come to Harrogate with that. And you should work fast before we're moving on to the next process. The funding for training, and one of the questions which I asked was, we're saying that 0.25 PA for the supervision support, and where the money is going to come from. We know if finance is challenging, we don't know where that is coming from, releasing people's time to supervision. Currently, the regional faculties provide £10,000 per trainee. That is mainly to provide those supervision. So there is some funding is there available, but I can't comment on the future funding availabilities, but I'm sure that will be continuing on that. And again, the level 7 apprenticeship, which I talked earlier on, that may not be there in the next year, which from the new government's recent strategy, probably they may remove level 7 apprenticeships. Then need to have further discussions around how we're going to support trainee ACPs or advanced practice. That is in a nutshell. There's a lot to talk about. I think it is around 36 pages, the document. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Sad. There's a couple of questions along here, Brett.
Thanks, Saj. That was a really great presentation. There's loads of work gone into that, and I know how hard you've worked on it, so thank you for coming and sharing that with us. I've got a comment and I've got a question. I don't know whether you'll know the answer to the question, but I suppose my comment is around advanced practice. So it's really good that we're moving away from sort of the separate descriptors, so that we've got an overarching advanced practice, because that will give a lot of people opportunities, I think. I think the apprenticeship, we'll leave that bit for further discussion another time. But I think one of the things that we're trying to do is looking around our clinical service strategy, so that we can look at what we need in some of our areas and how we can link that with workforce. So rather than it being a reactive thing, we're trying to be sort of a bit more proactive. So that was my sort of comment. The question is you alluded to regulation from the NMC around advanced practitioners. I suppose the bit for me is, and it's some sort of, we've got a large cohort of AHPs, and it's, are there any plans to have any regulation from HCPC? Because in and amongst that, there's a lot of...
time. They may change in future, but they haven't got anything at this point. Yeah. But for those organizations, I understand that the colleagues are using the Advanced Center for Advancing Practice badge. That is one assurance what you can seek in the absence of the regulatory requirements.
Thanks, Saj. I'll pass it on to Liz.
Hi, Saj. I'm Liz Audsley, the AHP lead for Harrogate. My question relates to when you talked about cleansing the data around ESR. So we have a lot of the AHP professions whereby the standard national profiles describe the roles as an advanced OT, advanced physiotherapist, advanced dietitian. but they may not be working at the level of an advanced practitioner. So if we are looking at that in the future and trying to standardise that across WIAT, is there going to be a move to look at what we call those particular levels of practice? I know we've got enhanced practice, but how do we change that? Because we could do that in Harrogate, but then somebody could move to Leeds and still be called an advanced physiotherapist, but they're not working at the levels of across all 4 pillars that you would be required to do for an advanced practitioner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that is it's a problem, or that is a situation in all organizations. We do have that. Even we have a band 3 or band 4 colleagues working with advanced in front of their job title, like an advanced healthcare support worker, another example of that. So we're not looking at changing any of that. It's about the advanced practitioner that is defined as per the multi-professional framework. And it's something we need to understand, aware of, or we always talk about is a level of practice. And it clearly says that there is a flow chart in there who can be called as advanced practitioner. And the framework states that someone with a master's level advanced in clinical practice and with the competencies and their capabilities as described in the multi-professional framework, and also working in that level. So it's not about what role they're currently in. It's like you may have I always use this example, you may have a band 5 nurse with a master's level qualification. That doesn't mean that that person should be moved into advanced practitioner 8A role. It's about what we employ them to work and what person is working at and what level they are working at. So I'm not expecting any kind of job evaluation or anything following this framework. This is to standardize the advanced practitioner roles in the organizations. So the advanced physiotherapist, advanced dietitian, I mean, most of the AHP roles have advanced roles and advanced in front of that. And I think in most organizations, they work as a band 7 in areas. I don't think there is any intentions or plans from WIAT organizations to change that, but that may be another discussion for chief nurses.
Good afternoon. So I'm Catherine Story. I work in the research team as HP 0 to 19 practitioner, but also interestingly in education with Sheffield Hallam in the apprenticeship programme, as I'm a dietitian by background. So I kind of got 2 hats here, so apologies, but it was brilliant work. It's super. Thank you so much. Is my first comment, but also I just really wanted to explore, and I may have misheard, in terms of off-the-job and on-the-job learning. Did you say you've defined what the hours look like? I wasn't sure, because I think in practice we find that does need clarification, not only in terms of what the expectation is and the transparency of that in terms of the university, but also the learner's experience of that. And then in terms of peer consistency, so it comes back to what Liz was mentioning about standardization, to ensure that the learning journey is fully supported. And that comes back to not just recruitment, but also retention and that career journey. So I wasn't sure, but I think it's a really interesting point, and thank you again for your work.
No, it's okay, yeah. It is what we clearly stating is, I mean, for the apprenticeship programs, it's a national requirement that the 20% of the time is protected for that, and that is why the minimum standard we're adhering to. In some areas, they'll be able to give that supervision time or supernumerary period, depending on the job where they are in. Some of them, they may not be. They may be able to continue with that, and it's all about supporting our people. People have ambitions, people have values they want to develop. At the same time, we want to develop the services and how we can support them in a sustainable way long term. That is what it is.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So really exciting times. I think we're at the beginning of a journey with the advanced practice framework, but is really going to put emphasis on, as I said earlier, the nurse and midwifery and AHP professions, and ensuring that our clinical services strategy drives for what we're all striving for, really, which is around patients receiving care in the right place. Just to sort of finish off the session this morning, I think Brenda's talked a lot around the work that we've done around workforce, and obviously Saj has introduced where we will be heading next. But just want to say a thank you from me and the board around the work that happens every day, because some of the retention that Brenda described through the workforce modelling is about where people work and how they feel when they come to work, and that isn't about Brenda's role or my role or any of the board's role. It's about what you do in the environment that you create at ward level. So remembering that quote I gave this morning about how are we creating a network of webs and how are we supporting people in everything that they do, it's keeping that theme throughout, really. Just ask yourself that question continually. So we're going to break now for lunch, and yes, and it says return by 1:30, so I'm assuming that's now, yes, that's right, because it's 12:30, so 1:30 is right. So we'll be back in the room for 1:30 for Monique's session for this afternoon. Thanks, everyone.